right, the time is 6 o'clock. We'll definitely get this started on time. Well, good evening, everyone. My name is Emily Duncan, and I work for the Indiana Utility Regulatory Commission, also known as the IURC. The IURC is hosting tonight's field hearing. If you aren't familiar, we are the state government agency responsible for the regulation of public utilities in the state of Indiana. The agency includes 5 appointed commissioners who have equal vote on all formal cases in front of the commission. The IURC hears evidence in cases filed before it and makes decisions based on the evidence presented in those cases. The IURC is required by state statute to make decisions in the public interest to ensure that utilities provide safe and reliable service at just and reasonable rates. Field hearings, just like this one, provide you the opportunity to formally offer comments to the commission on cases under consideration. Before the commission reaches a decision in this case, it reviews evidence presented by all parties, including the comments shared here this evening. We are joined tonight by Chairman Houston, Commissioner Bennett, Commissioner Valletta, and Commissioner Ziegner, presiding Administrative Law Judge Lloyd, and Amy, our court reporter, who will record your comments to be included in the official record of the case. Because this is a pending proceeding before the IURC, the commissioners and the administrative law judge are not allowed to answer questions or engage in any discussions in the case. They are here to listen to you. Of course, if you have any questions about tonight's hearing, feel free to find me in the back of the room. If you are planning to speak tonight, you'll notice that there are multiple mics at the podium. The one that's there, and then the court reporter's mic. It is important that you speak loudly and clearly into the mic so that it can pick up what you are saying. However, the court reporter's is the most important. With that, I'm going to turn over to the Indiana Office of Utility Consumer Counselor, which is the state agency that formally represents consumer interest in matters before the commission. Olivia Rivera from the Utility Consumer Counselor, or OUCC, will now offer a few comments prior to handing the mic off to Judge Lloyd to begin tonight's hearing.
Thank you all for coming out tonight. Again, my name is Olivia Rivera, and I'm with the OUCC, or Office of Utility Consumer Counselor. We're the separate state agency representing the public in this case and in other cases before the commission. There are 4 things that we want you to know before tonight's hearing begins. Number 1, tonight's hearing has one purpose, and that is to hear comments from the public. You will not see a presentation from the utility tonight because it filed its case in writing back in April. The OUCC's fact sheet has a brief summary of the utility's request along with information on the case. Again, tonight is about giving you the chance to speak to the commission. Number 2, this is one of many steps in the case process. Those steps are outlined in the fact sheet on the back, and a final order from the IURC is not expected until next year. Number 3, a team of engineers, attorneys, accountants, and other experts from our office is reviewing the utility's request, and we are scheduled to file testimony and recommendations on July 11th. Number 4, you should have received a form alongside your fact sheet. If you would like to speak tonight, please fill out the top half of that form and return it to our table. If you don't want to speak tonight, but still wish to make comments, you can do so in writing using that same form or after the hearing through the avenues noted in the fact sheet. Written comments carry equal weight to the spoken comments heard here tonight. They will become part of the formal case record so long as we receive them by July 5th. Thank you all for coming out tonight. If you have any questions, please feel free to come find me or another member of the OUCC team. And with that, I will turn it over to Judge Lloyd to begin the hearing.
Good evening. My name is Greg Lloyd. I am an administrative law judge with the Indiana Utility Regulatory Commission. In addition to the commissioners and court reporter who Emily Duncan introduced earlier, also present tonight are Carol Sparks-Drake from the Office of Utility Consumer Counselor. Seated next to her is Jennifer Washburn from the Citizens Action Coalition. And at the far end of the table is Andrew Wells representing the petitioner, Duke Energy Indiana. The purpose of tonight's hearing is to provide the general public an opportunity to testify regarding the relief sought in this requested in this cause. Testimony may be provided orally or in writing. Regardless of how comments are provided, they will all become part of the record in this case and will be considered by the commission. This is a formal hearing, and all testimony will be given under oath. As a formal proceeding, much like what you would see in a courtroom, outbursts in the form of booing or cheering or clapping are simply inappropriate. In order for all testimony to be properly taken down by the court reporter, it is important that each witness speak into the microphone slowly and clearly and have the opportunity to testify without interruption. And so that all members of the general public can present their views, oral testimony should only address the specific issues raised in this proceeding, specifically the issues related to Duke Energy Indiana's request for authorization to increase its electric utility service rates and charges. This will allow the field hearing to progress in an efficient manner that should allow all participants an opportunity to testify before the commission. I would emphasize that individuals who testify are encouraged to avoid repetitive testimony, just given the number of individuals who would like to speak tonight, and also to avoid overly lengthy comments to avoid the necessity for the presiding officers to set specific time limits on individual testimony. Again, the commission will consider all public comments, whether they're made orally or in writing. However, state law prevents us from answering any questions tonight as part of this proceeding. If you are going to testify orally, Ms. Sparks-Drake will let you know when to approach the microphone. And at this time, if you've not already done so, please turn off or silence your cell phones or other electronic devices, and I'll do the same. All right, and finally, I would like to give special thanks to the Monroe Convention Center and its staff for hosting us tonight. Ms. Tokash, are you ready? All right, let's go on the record. This is a field hearing before the Indiana Utility Regulatory Commission, and a cause documented before the commission is cause number 46038, captioned as Petition of Duke Energy Indiana, LLC, pursuant to Indiana Code Sections 8-1-2-42.7 and 8-1-2-61 for 1, authority to modify its rates and charges for electric utility service through a multi-step rate implementation of new rates and charges using a forecasted test period. 2, approval of new schedules of rates and charges, journal rules and regulations and riders. 3, approval of revised electric depreciation rates applicable to its electric plant in service, and approval of regulatory asset treatment upon retirement of the company's last coal-fired steam generation plant. 4, approval of an adjustment to the company's FAC rider to track coal inventory balances. And 5, approval of necessary and appropriate accounting relief, including authority to A, defer to a regulatory asset expenses associated with the Edwardsport carbon capture and sequestration study. B, defer to a regulatory asset cost incurred to achieve organizational savings. And C, defer to a regulatory asset or liability as applicable, all calculated income tax differences resulting from future changes in income tax rates. Notice of the time and place of the hearing was given as provided by law by publication in Marion County through the Indianapolis Star on May 31st, 2024, and also in Monroe County through the Herald Times on June 2nd, 2024. These are newspapers of general circulation, and these publications were made at least 10 days prior to the date of the field hearing. The proofs of publication of the notices have been received by the Commission, and are now incorporated into the record of this cause by reference and placed in the official files of the Commission. Notice has also been given to the Indiana Office of Utility Consumer Counselor and other interested parties. And may we have appearances, please?
On behalf of Petitioner Duke Energy Indiana, Andrew Wells, Plainfield, Indiana.
Thank you, Your Honor. On behalf of Citizens Action Coalition of Indiana, or CAC, please accept the appearance of Jennifer Washburn.
Carol Sparks Drake, on behalf of the Indiana Office of Utility Consumer Counselor.
All right, now at this time I'll swear in the members of the public who plan to give testimony tonight. If you plan to testify at this field hearing, please stand if you're able and raise your right hand and be sworn. Do you swear or affirm the evidence you will give in this cause will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Thank you. Thank you. You may be seated. Ms. Sparks Drake, please, when you're ready.
What we are going to do now, again, I'm here on behalf of the Indiana Office of Utility Consumer Counselor. And based on the forms you filled out, I will be calling your name when it's your turn to testify. Initially, I'm going to call up 3 individuals, and what we'll do is we'll have one person who needs to go ahead and go to the podium, please, and then 2 others in the seats that are up front. And then I'll call a name so that we'll keep the flow going as each witness testifies. I will call first Senator Yoder, Representative Matt Pierce, and Cheryl Munson. If you would please state your name for the record and spell it.
Thank you so much for bringing a field hearing to Bloomington. I'm Shelley Yoder, Shelliyoder, and I serve the Monroe County community. I live in Bloomington on the Indiana State Senate. And I am here to please ask you to listen to those who will be testifying after me. Hoosiers are facing a cost of living crisis, and the proposal to increase average electric bills by as much as 33% a month, per the analysis done by the Citizen Action Coalition, creates an untenable financial situation for average ratepayers, like our working families, seniors, those living on fixed incomes, veterans, and our small business owners, and our public schools. I strongly urge the IURC to listen to those who are coming after me, the testimony of Hoosiers who will bear the brunt of this rate hike. Thank you for being here, and I look forward to sitting and listening to all Hoosiers who are here today to voice their opinions. Thank you.
Thank you. Carolyn Craig. If you would also please state your name and spell it for the record.
Okay, I'm State Representative Matt Pierce, Mattpierce. I represent District 61, which is most of the city of Bloomington. And first, I would like to thank the Commission and Utility Consumer Counselor for scheduling this meeting in Bloomington. As you can see, there's a great deal of interest in this proceeding, and I appreciate you bringing things closer to home for my constituents. The 2 proposed rate increases in 2025 and 2026 will significantly burden my constituents. The Citizens Action Coalition estimates the increase will be $42 over April 2024 rates. They expect the request, if approved, to cost the average homeowner or ratepayer, average home, an additional $500 per year. So this is quite a significant increase that's being requested. Beyond the overall negative rate impact on ratepayers, the individual elements of the rate request are also problematic. Now, I'd like to walk through some of those. The first is the requested increase in the fixed charge. We have a lot of debates about fixed charges in the legislature, and the biggest problem with fixed charge, and this would be a 29.9% increase, is it undermines a ratepayer's incentive to either become more energy efficient, because no matter how much energy they use, they're paying that flat rate. It also undermines the incentive to add distributed energy to their homes, whether it be solar or some other kind of form of energy. So The fixed charges are difficult because you can't avoid them, no matter how you consume electricity. And these fixed rates, because you can't avoid them, have a particular hard impact on people with low and fixed incomes. So they're just, that flat rate is there and there's nothing they can do to avoid it. No matter how much they might decide they just have to turn off the air conditioning on a really hot day like today. It's not going to eliminate or reduce that fixed charge. Another problematic request is for the higher return on equity from 9.7 to 10.5%. I'm sure that the experts in the record are arguing that rises in interest rates or other places where money could be invested justifies increasing basically the profit margin, the profits of the utility. But I would argue that the higher return on equity is not justified because there's no coinciding risk. So as a member of the House Utilities Committee, from time to time I've attended conferences and things where there are investors, people from Wall Street who are experts in utilities, and they talk about rate-making constructs and things along those lines. And one of the things they tell me is that, and they believe this is a virtue, but they say that Indiana is so, I'm trying to think the right term, basically it's so favorable to utilities in its regulatory environment that investors love to invest here in Indiana utilities. And so what they're really saying there is our money we're investing has little risk. So normally if you think about it, you know, your personal advisor, they tell you that if you're investing in riskier things like the stock market, you probably have a greater opportunity for return than if you invest in something that's less risky like a bond. So I don't think it's justified to increase this profit margin for Duke because they're still going to be able to get the equity they need because it's a very low risk investment. The other thing is, and I know that some will say, well, a rate case is not the place to argue about the generation in the which they talk about in the resource plan. But I think you can't deny that a large part of this rate increase relates to the fact that Duke Energy is sticking with coal. They're almost kind of doubling down on coal at a time when we've seen other utilities moving away from coal as quickly as possible. So what are they asking their ratepayers to do? They're asking ratepayers to pay for some of the most expensive energy because we know that air emission requirements, environmental regulations are going to continue to increase. And so in this rate, they're projecting out maintaining their coal generation longer than most other utilities. And so what they're essentially doing is they're telling the ratepayers, we want you to continue to pay for a form of energy that's going to get more and more expensive. And we already see that in the coal ash issue, right? So that's another big expense that ratepayers are bringing because using coal creates coal ash. For decades now, it's been stored. Now the regulations are coming up. We're finally dealing with it. Hundreds of millions of dollars of costs. And for every year that Duke continues to use coal is another year of coal ash piling up, of pollution, of an environmental problem getting worse. And so by approving this rate increase, essentially you are approving the continued use of coal generation and that continued most expensive power that's available. Related to that is the request to pay for the study of carbon capture, and we used to call it sequestration, but I guess they call it storage now. But CCS is another thing where they want millions of dollars to study that, which is a little bit ironic because you might remember that when the Edwardsport plant was approved, one of the arguments was made is that this gasification plant can eventually have a snap-on carbon sequestration element. But once the plant began to be constructed, we heard, oh gee, I guess the topography, the geology of this area is not as good as we thought, and they kind of walked away from CCS. But now they're back again saying they want to do a study. And again, even if the study were to show that CCS would work, it's going to be one of the more expensive approaches to energy to try to maintain the coal gasification of that plant, which has a lot of takes a lot of energy just to run the plant. And so if you go down that path, you're not only going to maybe continue one of the more expensive plants ever built, but now you're going to add the additional expense of CCS to it. And that's something that ratepayers shouldn't have to bear. All right, another element is Duke. While they say they don't want ratepayers to pay for their lobbying expenses, they would like to recover the costs of belonging to trade associations. And I would argue that the trade associations are lobbyists, right? So clearly utilities hire their own lobbyists, their own government relations people. And as a legislator, and on a committee that oversees their industry, I deal with them a lot. But they're also, whether it's the Indiana Energy Association, Chamber of Commerce, they're there in the room just like lobbyists, and they're giving their opinions about bills. And for the Chamber of Commerce, Duke Energy is probably one of the larger dues-paying members because things are on a sliding fee scale. You can go look at Chamber of Commerce scorecards for the votes of legislators, where they list bills that are important to them, and you will see many energy issues on there. And obviously the Indiana Energy Association is a collective of the utilities from around the state, and so it's the same thing. They're in the room testifying too. So I think that if you feel it's not appropriate for ratepayers to pay for direct lobbying of utility corporations, then it's also not appropriate to have ratepayers pay for their dues to belong to trade associations, business organizations that are also going to be lobbying on their behalf. Okay, just a few points. I appreciate you letting me be a little long-winded here. As you probably know, the legislature, in just the last few years, added to the code 8-1-2-.6, which we call the 5 pillars. And in this section of the code, the General Assembly directed the Utility Commission to consider 5 different factors when it is considering rate constructs and basically everything you're doing. So these are supposed to be the overarching principles or things to consider. So we've got reliability, resiliency, and stability. So that's making sure the electricity is actually on. And then we have 2 that are particularly important for this proceeding. The second one on the list is affordability. Right? So the legislature said that in the code that you must consider these. And so I think that this being a new section of the code, this is an opportunity where the commission should add some concrete metrics to these policies that the legislature's put out. So if there is ever a case that called for us to decide and define what is affordability, is a $42 rate increase that will bring your average home up to maybe $150 a month for electricity, is that affordable? There's a way to bring some kind of concrete analysis to that the commission could use, because that's something you're supposed to consider. The other one, the 5th one on the list, the 5th pillar, is environmental sustainability. So you're supposed to be thinking about how do you maintain an environmentally sustainable energy mix. And so again, in this proceeding, these rates are going to enable continued use of the most expensive and most polluting form of energy, coal. And the coal ash ponds and all that comes along with it, and the air emissions as well. So I think this is the proceeding where the commission needs to carry out the mandate of the General Assembly and wrestle with those pillars. And I'll admit that balancing that against reliability, sustainability may not always be simple, but I think it's something that has to be done. I think this, particularly this proposal, affordability and environmental sustainability, really cry out for some more direct consideration. Okay, the last point I would like to make is throughout my service in the General Assembly on the Utilities Committee, whenever we've had debates, and I've raised the issue of like, hey, this policy you're adopting may result in significant burdens on ratepayers. It may not be the best for ratepayers.
the response I always get is you don't have to worry about that because the Indiana Utility Regulatory Commission, under the law, must ensure that all rates are just and reasonable. So even if we come up with something, even if we signal that we're interested in a particular energy mix or a particular approach to something, I'm told that we can rely upon the commission to ensure they're just and reasonable. And so you are the last line of defense for the ratepayer. And quite honestly, the legislature hides behind that, right? So we say we can count on you to make it all work out in the end. So I'm asking you as a legislator to bring some truth to that statement, to make that happen for ratepayers, and please do all you can to, in this proceeding, to ensure that electricity rates remain affordable and that our environmental mix of energy is sustainable. Thank you very much.
Greg Grant. Ms. Munson, if you would please state your name and spell it.
Cheryl Munson, CHERYL MUNSON. Good evening, everyone, and I want to thank you for coming to Bloomington to hear from the many people who wish to address you and who asked me to come to address you because they couldn't be here, they're not comfortable. These are my friends and neighbors. I am an at-large member of the Monroe County Council, and other members of the County Council are here with me today. I will note that I'm speaking just for myself because the council has taken no formal action on this, because we have the job of dealing with rates very often. It is our job as the fiscal body of county government, and we do set rates, at least indirectly we set them. And we're very familiar with the kind of job that you all have. So let me add just a few points. I always learn from Representative Matt Pierce's comments, so I especially thank him for that. And I didn't know about affordability being a pillar. And absolutely, that is why my 140,000 constituents want to talk to you and want you to hear that they simply don't feel they can bear the cost of a $40-some increase. And I didn't understand about the annual percentage that is addition to the monthly rate increase, and that is a further burden for them. The other thing I wish you to know is that Monroe County offered Duke the opportunity to have, at an incredibly low cost or perhaps no cost, a large field for solar panels. And we wanted to do this as our contribution to a better environment, and it did not fit their plan. That was about 8 years ago. Maybe their plans will change soon, and we can have a more sustainable mix of energy production. So I urge you to deny the proposed increases that Duke is requesting. I don't know if you can send them back to do a revised proposal, or you just simply deny this particular action. But whatever you are doing, please pay attention to the burden for people who simply cannot afford the increases proposed. And as a last note, I will say that the increase is so far above the current inflation rate, so far above the the average inflation rate over the last 10 years. I hope you will look at this when you are evaluating what is a reasonable amount that people should be charged for use of electricity. Thank you.
Thank you. Andy Ruff. Ms. Craig, if you would please state your name and spell it.
Carolyn Craig, CarolynCraig. I'm glad to meet you today and speak here. I'm a fifth-generation Hoosier, former member of the Monroe County Community School Corporation, and taught accounting here in this community for over 15 years. So I'm well embedded in this community. I was interested in that proposed increase on the rate of return from 9% to 10%. I have an MBA in finance and I'm a CPA. And I analyzed many financial statements when I worked in commercial lending. Small businesses typically earn 2 to 3% return on net income. 5% was a majorly profitable business. But I'm here tonight also to represent the people who can't be here. Teaching at Ivy Tech, I taught many night classes. The people who can't be here tonight are people who work the second shift, also called the second trick. I know I'm from a working class family. Or they're taking night classes, or they have small children and can't afford daycare. They're going to be significantly impacted by this. As the school board member, I was very aware of the level of poverty in this community, the number of our students who are on free and reduced lunches. And in my night classes at Ivy Tech, I had many students who had been laid off because of the change in the manufacturing component in this community. So I want you to think about the people who can't be here tonight, because if they're working a night job, they're barely making it in Bloomington. Thank you.
Marilyn Bauchat. If you would state your name, please, and spell it for the record.
Yes, my name is Greg Grant, Greg, First, thank you for this public hearing. I think it is extremely timely. I've been a Duke Energy customer for 24 years now, and Bloomington resident for the last couple years. But as a grandfather of four, I'm very concerned about the lack of justification for the requested rate increase, especially given the lack of progress in Duke's efforts to include lower cost, cleaner, renewable energy sources in its generation mix. Duke's primary justification for its requested rate increase is that it hasn't raised rates since 2020, and that it would also like to increase its return on equity from 9.7% to 10.5%, equating to giving its stockholders the largest profit margin of all the electric utilities in Indiana. Such rationale is, quite frankly, not even close to an appropriate basis for requesting any rate increase, let alone a 33% increase in residential rates as detailed by the Citizens Action Coalition. By the way, this 33% increase is far above the 19% increase that Duke says it's requesting for its residential customers and 16% average for all of its customers. Clearly, Duke's accounting assumptions behind its stated percentage increases in the rates are in need of very careful detailing by both the OUCC and the IURC for responsible rate setting and Duke's Hoosier customers' awareness. Given the substantial decreases that have occurred in the cost of solar and wind energy, both before and since 2020. By accelerating replacement of its dirty coal-fueled plants with clean, renewable solar and wind, Duke would have been lowering its cost for electrical power generation during these last 4 years, like other Indiana utilities have done, as well as utilities elsewhere in the U.S. Instead, Duke's generation mix now has the lowest amount of lower-cost renewable energy among Indiana's public utilities, despite having by far the largest number of customers. Likewise, instead of delaying its coal plant retirements, Duke should be aggressively lowering its heat-trapping carbon emissions by accelerating its transition to renewable solar and wind energy. This will also lower Hoosier's medical costs by reducing exposure to toxic air pollutants from fossil fuels. More renewable energy sooner rather than later will thus also help to keep Indiana competitive with other states for retaining existing businesses and attracting new businesses concerned about their employees' health care costs and general well-being. For example, General Motors has been maximizing its use of solar panels at its production facilities. Many other manufacturers and businesses can reasonably be expected to grow or shrink jobs for Hoosiers according to the relative ease they see for accessing lower cost, cleaner, renewable energy by way of the power grid and otherwise. Additionally, businesses along with residential customers need to know that the overall growth in demand for electrical power can be met with clean power as cleaner electric vehicles become increasingly more affordable and recharging infrastructure is further built out. Additional lower cost clean renewable electricity will likewise be required for attracting the fast developing data centers for information services and the associated direct and indirect jobs in Indiana. By accelerating rather than delaying the transition to lower cost clean renewable energy, Duke will also reduce our state's future costs required to clean up or better protect our surface and groundwaters from potential pollution by coal ash dumps. These future costs need to be minimized by accelerating the transition to renewable energy, since these costs are substantial today and will only increase as climate change induced by carbon emissions makes major flooding events likely to occur more frequently here in Indiana. To summarize, with its 2020 and 2021 rate increase, Duke was either ineffectively incentivized to invest in clean, lower-cost renewable energy sources, or Duke basically failed to make good on their stated intentions and plans to do so. Either way, Duke should not be rewarded with higher profits and a rate increase for incurring any higher costs due to their slower transition to lower-cost renewables. Instead of raising rates to cover such higher costs, the IURC should be reducing Duke's profits and rates so that the rates are based much more on Duke's performance for lowering costs and lowering pollution. Such a performance basis for setting electric rates is needed to appropriately incentivize or reward Duke for the actions required to bring online the lower cost, clean, renewable energy needed here in Indiana. And bottom line is that in the requested rate increase, Duke has not provided the justification needed for any rate increase, and there are many reasons Duke should have been lowering their costs and should now be requesting lower electric rates compared to the rates requested in 2020 and approved in 2021. Likewise, going forward, to meet Hoosier's growing need for electrical energy, Duke should be lowering its toxic air pollution and heat trapping carbon emissions, its costs, and its rates for Hoosier customers by utilizing more renewable energy as soon as feasible, instead of using more expensive and more polluting coal and natural gas. Thank you for your service to the Hoosier community.
Mary Mayhearn. Mary Mayhearn. Mr. Ruff?
Thank you sincerely for being here, and thank you for providing.
If you would
Oh,
please
sorry, you said my
state your
name.
name and spell it. Thank you.
Andrew, known as Andy, Ruff, ANDY, RUFF. Thank you again for being here and for providing this opportunity to all of us in attendance. I'm an at-large representative on the Bloomington City Council, and I want to talk for just a minute, as some others already have. I'll try to be quick and concise about the unaffordability and the unfairness for the ordinary people that I was elected to represent in this community of this proposal, the unaffordability and the unfairness. Bloomington is known, not without good reason, as a relatively low wage but high cost of living city. And in a place and time of high and increasing costs for housing, food, fuel, health care, and more. And with inflation, though being tamed a bit, still on the horizon, and high interest rates still on the horizon, all of this is hitting low and moderate income people by far the hardest. Ordinary people are having a harder and harder time making ends meet. This increase is too much. It's not affordable. It's also unfair to ordinary Hoosiers. It's unfair because Duke is a healthy and profitable corporation, and delivering high returns to investors and high salaries to executives. A much larger share of the investments that need to be made in the grid should be coming from profits, not from the already strained budgets of ordinary ratepayers. It's also unfair because much of what the rate increase is to pay for is the cost of doing business for Duke. I mean, I understand why Duke would try to recover any possible cost they could through ratepayers and maximize returns to investors, but a lot of these things are just the cost of doing business. Finally, it's unfair because it's unfair because ratepayers aren't the ones who've made bad and costly decisions, like entering into unwise coal contracts. And customers shouldn't be the ones shouldering most of those costs, the results of those costs of those decisions. Again, the proposal is just unaffordable and unfair to captive customers. Making Duke and its parent company more profitable and increasing investor returns on the backs of consumers, when it's the management that primarily put Duke in the situation that they're in, is unfair and just plain wrong. I'm speaking for my financially stressed constituents in Bloomington. Approving this proposal by Duke, we're still on? Yeah. Is a perfect example of how wealth in this state and in this nation is in so many ways being transferred upward, increasing economic inequality, which has become a threat to the health of our nation and to our democracy. So I urge you to please carefully consider this proposal and do not approve it the way it's been proposed. Thank you.
Ellen Mills.
Hello, I'm Marilyn Beauchat, MarilynBauchat. I'm a Duke customer and concerned member of the community. When we moved our young family to Indiana in 1988, we were surprised to learn about the poor air quality and general lack of protections of our air and water here. I wondered why the people of Indiana tolerated the proliferation of polluting coal plants and coal ash ponds. But most Hoosiers with whom I spoke weren't aware that Indiana regularly ranks third from the bottom in general environmental health, unless those people live near a pollution source or are dealing with a respiratory issue they weren't aware. So when I checked our air quality here today, it was rated fair, meaning generally acceptable for most individuals, And then when I checked Evansville area, it was rated poor, which indicates a high level of pollution and advises a decreased amount of time outside. And if you're familiar with the term sacrifice zone, it's a frequently used environmental justice concept, often used to refer to areas like Southwest Indiana where super polluters pump out huge amounts of toxic emissions and climate disrupting gases. 3 years ago, Duke shared plans to transition toward cheaper renewable energy. Now Duke wants to continue with coal along with natural gas, another creator of toxic pollution and of heat trapping emissions. A molecule of unburned natural gas, methane, when leaked can also be up to 40 times as powerful at trapping heat as a molecule of carbon dioxide. During today's public stakeholder meeting I attended online for Duke, Mr. Gagnon displayed several tables modeling Duke's future path. Carbon capture and sequestration was included in several models, as if it is a safe alternative for the future. The risks of this high-cost process might include leakage that could contaminate drinking water and release carbon back into the atmosphere, unpredictable reactions with minerals that could cause unstable geology, and hazardous risk for workers in nearby communities during production, transportation, handling, and disposal. We really don't need to leave more toxic dumps for the future, do we? It's like coal ash ponds. It is unacceptable that Duke Energy is seeking to impose higher costs on Indiana residents to sustain their reliance on polluting coal. We cannot expect Indiana residents to pay more to support practices that harm our environment and health. I would like to be able to trust this commission to make decisions that will protect our health and safety. Be the advocate we need to achieve fair and affordable utility fees, and stand up to Duke Energy, the state's largest and most polluting utility. We need to honor the past and present caretakers of this land and those yet to be born with the decisions we make and the actions we take in the days to come.
Wade Cat.
I'm Mary Mahern, M-A-R-Y-M-A-H-E-R-N. I'm Dr. Mary Mahern, family practice physician and the co-owner of a small medical practice here in Bloomington. I'm grateful for this opportunity to speak to you this evening, our utility regulators for Indiana. I'm also grateful to be in this well-lit, air-conditioned room that's supplied by Duke Energy, mostly with coal, I understand. We forget where it comes from. So, because it's about 91 degrees outside last time I checked. So I'm requesting that you deny Duke Energy's proposed rate hike. As a primary care physician, I know the importance of social determinants of health. These are non-medical factors that determine health. This certainly includes housing and affordability of basic living expenses, including the essential of electricity. I'm concerned for our most vulnerable citizens who must make hard choices with meager finances and can even face homelessness because they can't pay their utility bill and afford their rent. Electricity really is essential. When I was in my early 20s, this was back in the early 70s, we had a back to the land movement going on. It was before I went to medical school. I was a bit of a free spirit at the time. I lived out on the land. We didn't have running water, but we had a wonderful spring. We'd haul the water in. We didn't have indoor plumbing. We grew a huge garden and we heated and cooked with wood. I baked bread on a wood cook stove for a while. It was a lot of fun. But you know, I've never lived completely off grid because I have always had electricity. This is something that we've taken for granted in our country since the mid-1930s. And we all need to be able to have the lights come on when we flip that switch in our house. Not just for lights, but for all the other wonderful things electricity does for us. And we need to count on our public utilities to be forward-thinking and to replace the super-polluting coal-fired electric generators that Duke Energy so heavily relies on. I am very concerned about the health of our citizens with air pollution, global climate instability, as well as the currently present groundwater and river contamination from toxic coal ash. I know I'm not the only one in this room that every time they come back on a road trip, come over the state line and sing Back Home Again in Indiana. I can't help it, have to do it. Well, when my dream about the moonlight on the Wabash turns to a nightmare, it's because of concern of arsenic and other toxic contamination from coal ash in our rivers, in our groundwater. We cannot afford electricity the way it's currently generated by Duke Energy. Duke Energy's not demonstrated forward-thinking plans for electrical generation, and this proposed rate hike, they're asking the citizens to shoulder the burden of past poor planning that has resulted in continued over-reliance on coal and the continued burden of huge amounts of coal ash waste that remain a major health risk for Hoosiers. So it's time for Duke Energy to step up for Hoosier citizens rather than its shareholders. Thank you.
Jeff Marks.
Good evening. I'm Ellen Mills. ELLENMILLS. I live in Bloomington. I will tell you, yes, the housing in Bloomington is unaffordable. You also may not know that over 60% of the households in Bloomington rent. So I live in Bloomington, I am a renter, and I am retired. In order to be affordable, I live in an apartment complex which is probably 60-some years old. It's maintained, but it is 60 years old. It was built in a time when people believed in electric heat and electric everything. So Duke is a major bill for me. In the winter, Duke is the only one I pay for heat, and in the summer, for air conditioning. So I just want to stress how important it is for some of us to try to make ends meet in a town where the expenses are high, especially housing, and Duke wants to raise rates. Please refuse this rate hike. Thank you.
David Wildman. Mr. Catt, if you would please state your name and spell it.
Yes, I am Wade Catt, WADECATT. Greetings, commissioners and fellow community members. My name is Wade. I am a current MD PhD student. I'm a Hoosier native, and I'm here to speak on behalf of myself to the public health impact of Duke Energy's proposed rate hike. First, I want to say I hope everyone is staying cool during this heat wave. It would be a real shame if anyone lost their electricity this week because they couldn't afford their bill. In 2006, the World Health Organization affirmed energy as an essential basic need. A household is considered energy insecure if it is either unable to afford its energy needs or does not have access. Energy insecurity is a well-described risk factor which has known to precipitate worse health outcomes both at the individual and community level in a variety of ways. This is data from the IU Environmental Resilience Institute. Research has been ongoing in our state for the past several years. Among Hoosier households statewide, 20% indicated that they could not pay an energy bill, 15% received an energy shutoff notice, 7% had a disconnection. 30% indicated that they had to reduce or forego expenses for basic household needs, such as medicine or groceries, in order to pay an electric bill. These citizens are more likely to be seniors, they're more likely to be on fixed income, they're more likely to be people of color, more likely to be households with young children. households with individuals who require electronic medical devices, and those in dwellings with poor conditions. To reiterate, people are already in droves deciding between groceries, their medications, and keeping the lights on, and their AC. Climate scientists use the term wet bulb, combining heat with humidity measures to describe the risk of heat-related illness. Wet bulb days above 80 degrees Fahrenheit are dangerous, and exposure to wet bulb conditions 95 degrees or higher for more than a few hours is often fatal. Indiana currently averages 1 to 10 dangerous wet bulb days per year. However, current modeling and projections estimate that we will have 10 to 30 dangerous wet bulb days every year by 2050. And according to the National Weather Service, heat-related deaths in the United States between the years 2020 and 2023 have been more than twice the 30-year average. Additionally, there is data indicating that people in energy-insecure households are more likely to remain in poverty for longer periods of time, more likely to suffer adverse mental and physical health consequences, and more likely to die from heat, cold, or adverse weather events. In other words, this problem is not going away, it is getting worse. This rate hike is certainly going to make it much worse for people who are already vulnerable to energy insecurity, related illnesses, and death. We should be solving this problem, not rewarding the people responsible. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Dan Bolton.
Good evening. My name is Jeff Marks, Jeff Marks, M as in Mary, ARKS. I rise today, and thank you, commissioners, for holding this hearing. I rise today to oppose the rate case as presented by Duke Energy Indiana. I do this for two reasons. One, the rate case will hit the most vulnerable among us quite hard. I want to suggest that in Indiana, utilities are not allowed to cut off the power during the winter, but they are allowed to cut off the power during the summer. And with no accommodation by Duke, with the rise in these rates, more families will be at risk in our increasingly warm summers. Two, a regulated environment is established to regulate the behavior of given certain infrastructure monopolies so that the provider can provide the service for a reasonable return at a reasonable cost to the consumer. Regulators should not support poor business practices, principally because these poor business practices will neither be in the interest of the consumer nor the provider. DEI's specific poor business practices, as reflected in this rate case, include, but are not limited to, A, requiring customers to pay for Duke's additional coal piles. There is a fact today that the current tracker allows for 45 days of coal piles, and Duke has asked for an increase in this to 65 days, I think. I can understand that the petitioner is anxious for the stability of the supply of coal. That's because approximately 3/4 of its output product is dependent upon coal. But allowing for this coal pile change reduces the incentive for the petitioner to acquire a more balanced portfolio of generation capabilities, a better business practice, and that backs both the consumer and the producer further into the corner. B, an increasing dependence on coal at a time when it should be rebalancing electricity supply portfolio. It appears that other investor-owned utilities in Indiana have made a commitment to a balanced generation portfolio, mostly without coal, but in any event trending towards the elimination of coal. Renewable energy approaches are far from experimental at this point. In this rate case, the petitioner generates even more of its electricity from coal while further deferring plans for transformation. It is literally behind the power curve in that it has to rely on the old supplies because it has not moved swiftly enough to transform its fleet. At some level, this might be irrelevant to the Commission, but it has a duty not to back itself into a corner. C, a future risk reliability, resiliency, and stability. In the early 2030s, the Commission will be faced with a challenge to its mission to provide reliable, resilient, and stable power to the communities of Indiana if you approve this rate increase as it stands. You will have relieved the petitioner of its incentive to act, and you will have raised the rates to support the status quo, as well as some ancillary improvements. Still in the future will be requests to increase rates due to new capital investments to move beyond coal or not. And if the petitioner does not do that, then it will likely be faced with extraordinary costs to capture carbon at its old sites, again, bringing new costs to the payers. Those carbon capture systems, unlike renewable energy systems, are novel and likely expensive. The worst outcome would be that the petitioner had to shut down its coal-based generating capacity, and that would likely have a regulatory impact throughout all of Indiana. Finally, pay for poor performance. I am quite dismayed by the petitioner's request for greater return on equity. Given the lack of planning, the lack of flexibility, and the lack of risk mitigation due to failure to balance the generation portfolio, I would urge the Commissioner to, if nothing else, reject the request for greater return on equity. In my working life, I was not rewarded for doing a poor job. Why should the petitioner be so rewarded? It is past time for Duke to balance its portfolio so that it has options as the future races towards us. If it does not follow its own integrated resource plan, that's not the fault of the consumers. And a reduction in profit is appropriate until they begin to move forward. They are putting the consumers at risk, all the while charging them more for it. Please reject the petitioner's request.
Dr. Matthew Schultz.
David Wildeman, DAVID, WILDEMANN. I am a Duke residential customer from Columbus, Indiana. I am opposed to the rate increase requested by Duke. There are three primary reasons I oppose this rate case. First, Duke's request is to raise revenue by 16.2%. Yet, using the projected residential bill of $170.67 for 1,000 kilowatt hours, my bill would increase by 32%. What is being presented as a 16% revenue increase is really a 32% increase for residential customers like me. Second, as a member of a faith-based organization who helps with the needs of low and fixed income individuals and families, I see firsthand how they struggle to pay their electric bills. They are residential customers, like me, who will see more than a 30% increase in their monthly bill. This rate increase will be especially tough on those who can least afford the increase. Added to this is the unfair, negatively tiered rate structure where those who consume the least pay the highest rate per kilowatt hour. Third is Duke's reliance on expensive, polluting, and unprofitable coal-fired generating plants and the associated coal ash cleanup costs. In the next couple of years, Duke plans to burn more coal, delay the planned retirement of coal plants, and in the process continue to increase the amount of coal ash that will need to be disposed of. Why should I pay more to keep expensive and polluting coal plants running when less expensive renewable alternatives are available? I am also opposed to several other aspects of the rate increase, including an increase in the shareholder return on equity from 9.7% to 10.5%, paying for coal overstocks, and paying for a carbon capture and sequestration study that would only increase the cost of unprofitable coal-fired generating units. Again, why should I have to pay more for Duke's continued reliance on expensive and polluting coal while other utilities in Indiana are implementing less expensive renewable energy? Thank you.
Ann Hedden.
My name is Daniel Bolton, DANIELBOLTON, and I'm opposing Duke's 16%, which I just found out is 32% increase due to it's unaffordable. It's crazy high. We come from a town that is mostly low-income people. People like my friend back here and other people that's not here to speak right now, I'm here to speak for them. It's unaffordable. I'm a little tongue-tied right here, but it's just not doable. And I'm afraid that with that kind of increase, it's going to put a lot of people homeless, and therefore their kids will be without a home, and their parents will have to figure out other options and not be able to take care of their families because of this increase. When we come from a town where the housing is unaffordable, sorry. What I'm trying to say is this isn't increases too much. We need something done for the people of this town, of this community, especially the low income. And that's all I have to say.
Thomas Schwant. Dr. Schultz, if you'd please state your name and spell it for the record.
Matthew Schultz, MATTHEWSCHULZ. I'm asking that my testimony be entered in the public record as opposing Duke Energy's rate case cause number 46038. I am calling on the IURC to please deny Duke Energy's rate increase. I've been a customer of Duke since 1998 personally, and then professionally since 2006. I've helped thousands of patients from all around the country in over a 4,000 mile plus radius, and I gave over the majority of my income treating patients since being a doctor pro bono because people cannot afford to heal naturally. I have paid my dues to this society. I am testifying today on behalf of all of Duke Energy's customers, most specifically the disabled, single parents, children, and small business owners that will all be harmed by this rate increase, if approved. It is not in the best interests of the IURC to approve this rate increase because of the harm it will inflict on the customers. We are enslaved by the monopoly, and it is your job to uphold what is right. In my opinion, Duke Energy should get a rate decrease, not a rate increase. They have already admittedly failed in their promise to show any steps towards moving to clean energy and away from coal. Coal is not only destroying our environment for our future generations, but is much more costly for everyone, except for the profit margin of Duke Energy. For example, included in their proposal is the request for a private jet, I was told. Please make Duke Energy responsible for the exorbitant costs of a private jet out of their $497 million profit from last year, and do not pass that burden on to its customers. Personally, I am struggling to pay my already existing energy bill, and that struggle will certainly worsen with a rate increase. As a single parent taking care of a 22-month-old, it is a struggle to say the least to afford the already high energy bills, and consequently make it an even larger struggle affording things like diapers, wipes, and food for my family. Not to mention how many times a year does their power grid go down, which has caused all of my food to spoil, leaving me in a position where I don't have the resources to replace it. Energy is supposed to be a public service, a utility for the people. They should not be stockpiling coal while lying to their customers and regulatory bodies or pretending that they're shifting to clean energy. And most importantly, they should not be rewarded with a rate increase. This has already been a hot spring and an even hotter start to summer. My son and I have been forced to live in the dark in 80+ degree temperatures in an effort to make the current energy costs as affordable as possible. In short, Duke Energy is making their customers suffer, and now are proposing to increase that suffering. For example, I am waiting to get on disability for years now, so I have very little to no income. I was rounded by a trash truck and they wanted to do 8 surgeries, but as a natural medicine doctor, very successful for many years helping many patients do not have every single one of those recommended surgeries, I refused to have surgery. So I suffer. I have to get assistance for my current Duke Energy bills so that my power doesn't go out or our food goes bad. I now live in Section 8 housing in an older home and have no other options. This rate increase will literally take food out of my son and my mouths and inhibit me from affording other things such as diapers. I use my personal experience, but I'm certain there are numerous other customers who share a similar burden. A couple of weeks ago, while waiting in line at a local food pantry, an elderly lady in front of my son and I was complaining, distressed because she hasn't been able to turn on her air conditioning yet this year. Ironically, she exclaimed it was because she cannot afford her current energy rate to do so. You are literally making the disabled, children, and the elderly suffer in high temperatures because we cannot afford your bills. It is important for the IURC to understand the harmful impact this rate increase will have on its customers, including the numerous people that are struggling to make ends meet that are forced every year to get EAP assistance so that they are included in the moratorium in order to not have their energy shut off in the middle of winter. My business is now closed due to my disability, but when I was still open and practicing, the cost of Duke Energy's bills were astronomical, adding to the severe difficulty with running a small business. Duke Energy's product is supposed to be a public service, not a form of enslavement. I am submitting evidence today demonstrating Duke Energy's failure to move to clean energy in contrast to all other energy companies in Indiana, substantiating the IURC's denial of the rate increase. I will also be submitting evidence demonstrating that their bills are already too high in the form of bills from Duke Energy, as well as having proof of having to get assistance to pay for those bills, including they sent me to collection and harmed my credit score. I'm submitting proof of that as well. I implore the IURC to deny Duke Energy's rate increase. Thank you, Commission, for your time today.
Hello, my name is Ann. Go ahead. My name is Ann Hedden. That's spelled ANNEHEDIN. And I have retired from a career in marketing communications for the developers of business-to-business software, in the course of which I learned quite a deal about how businesses run. I am a Bloomington resident, a solar owner, and the grandparent of 5 grandchildren. I invested in solar 12 years ago when my granddaughter was born, at the beginning of a heat wave just like this one. I asked that the IURC deny Duke's request for a rate hike in cause number 46038. Duke expects to cover the cost of mandated coal ash cleanups by burning more coal, thereby creating more coal ash, and to postpone the scheduled closing of 4 coal burning units in order to do this. This is a vicious circle. It does not make sense on a number of fronts. First, if Duke were investing in clean energy, there would be less new coal ash to clean up. Back in January last year, a comprehensive analysis called the Coal Cost Crossover, the 3rd edition of this particular analysis, by the Energy Innovation Policy and Technology LLC, demonstrated that, and I quote, "It's more expensive for 99% of the country's coal-fired power plants to keep running than it is to build an entirely new solar or wind energy operation nearby." That conclusion is based on 2021 actual cost data, combined with the new tax credits from the Inflation Reduction Act. Back in 2021, and again, this is a quote from the study, on average, the marginal cost for coal plants was $36 each megawatt hour, while new solar was about $24 each megawatt hour, or about a third cheaper. The cost of renewables has continued to drop. Duke's request for a rate hike clearly shows that the cost of continuing to operate coal-fired plants continues to rise. Secondly, just think about our moment in time. The previous 9 years have been the hottest on record. We are now in the middle of a brutal heat wave caused in part by burning fossil fuels. Consumers are running their air conditioners nonstop if they can afford them. Cities like Bloomington are opening cooling centers for those without AC because of the health risks associated with extreme heat. We are halfway through the crucial decade for transitioning away from burning fossil fuels. Despite this, Duke is proposing to increase the amount of coal it burns rather than have its shareholders absorb the cost of a procurement mistake that Duke made. They want consumers to pay for it instead. Others have spoken very eloquently of the situation of these consumers, and I won't repeat that, but Duke's tiered pricing already places a disproportionate burden on people with low and fixed incomes. Please do not allow prices to be jacked up by another 33%. That is not necessary to ensure our supply of energy. Please require Duke to reevaluate its coal retirement plans and to revise its resource planning in the light of IRA loan guarantees and tax credits for clean energy. Thank you for your attention.
So I can see what I'm doing. Thomas Schwant, Thomas, and Schwant is S as in Sam, CHW, A, N as in Nancy, D as in David, T as in Tom. A nice Irish name. I'm a board member of Monroe County United Ministries, which many people in this room know by the acronym MACM. Right? We are a social service agency that serves poor families. We run an early childhood center that currently has about 90 children enrolled and 80-some families. The majority of those families live at 30% of the area median income, which in HUD's language is very low income. The remaining of the numbers of those families live at 80% of the area median income, which is low income. We also operate a food pantry, and we provide rent and utility assistance to the people who come to us for assistance. I'm not speaking on behalf of the agency, but I'm quite confident that my fellow board members, the staff of the agency, and the clients that I see every week where I work there would agree with what I have to say. The proposed increase, as you've now heard many times, and so I'm going to make this short, will be a very difficult, if not impossible, burden for these people to bear. They will be deciding, they will literally be deciding between buying groceries or paying their utility bill. And it is beyond the shadow of a doubt. If this rate increase goes into effect, we will be seeing an increased demand for utility assistance, which in effect means that we will be turning to the people of the city to provide us with money to help these people with their utilities, which to me is morally unacceptable. Thank you.
All right, the time is 7:20. Let's take a 10-minute break, and we'll be back at 7:30. Ladies and gentlemen, I just wanted to make a quick note for everybody. So we started tonight, field hearing at 6 o'clock. It's now 6:30. We've gone through 7:30. Excuse me, 7:30. We've gone through 16 speakers. We have 41 to go. So what I would emphasize is feel free to say, I agree with what's already been said. You can reference what other people have said. We, the commissioners and I, we have taken notes from what prior speakers have said. So feel free just to agree with other points that have been made rather than remaking those exact same points. Alternatively, feel free to also submit your comments in writing. The commissioners will consider all comments, whether in writing or made orally, so that's an option for you as well. Lastly, obviously be very mindful. We've got 41 more people to go, 41 individuals who want to have a turn to speak as well, so be concise. Thank you for your time. All right, and let's go back on the record. All right, we are back on the record. Ms. Park-Strakes, please proceed.
Alternatively, or additionally, I would also note the more time we take clapping, I understand this is unpopular, and I am your counsel, but the slower the process does go. So I'm going to call up 3 more people, and let's try our best to be courteous and respectful of those behind us, so that I can try to do my best to get everyone up this evening who has something to say. Okay, our next 3, Robert R., and I'm sorry, I don't know if it's Deparf or Demarf. Thank you, sir. Neil Goswami and Lois Sabo Skelton. Yes, please, you're on deck. If you would please state your name and spell it for the record.
Obviously, you can't read it.
I apologize, I tried.
Nobody else can either. My name is Robert Deppert, Robert, R-O-B-E-R-T, Deppert, D-E-P-P-E-R-T. And I would like to thank you guys for coming down to Bloomington and hearing our testimony today. I do oppose this rate increase, just to be a little different. But what the IURC kind of represents to me is the bulwark, the citizens' representation against a monopoly. So as an economic entity, a monopoly is almost totally free to do when you're dealing with a service such as electricity, to do whatever they want. And we have set up in the state of Indiana, and we're smart enough to put a bulwark in to represent the interests of the people. And I hope that you guys take that charge to heart. I know you were all put there by the governor, my senior class president, and I'd like to let you know, as somebody that's a business owner in Bloomington, I run Senior Solutions of Bloomington. We've been incorporated since 2010. I deal with approximately 400 people that are on fixed incomes and help them with their insurance. And not a month goes by where I don't have a customer come in whose costs, medical costs, are so high that they turn to me, not the most obvious person, for help to figure out how to pay the bills that they've got. Maybe change your insurance slightly, maybe do something different and try to save that money. And I find that charge and that ability when I'm able to help those people is extremely important if and when I am able to help. And how that relates to you folks is basically these people at the lower incomes are running on very low margins. We have very high costs in Bloomington. The cost of housing, the cost of rent is substantially higher in Bloomington than it is anywhere else in the state. So when you start talking about taking another $42 out of people's pockets per month, that's not just them. It's also going to be an increase on the business owners. And what are the business owners going to do? They're going to pass it on. So as the representative of the people here, you need to help stop inflation. What we're looking at right now is a lot of the inflation that's going on is corporations taking advantage of the fact that there has been some inflation and they're recording record profits. So costs are going up mostly from profit taking and greed. And when you come to us and say, hey, Duke Energy needs a 9.7% profit, it needs to go up to 10.5, that is the greed that we're talking about. You're supposed to represent us against that greed. So when you think about those seniors, I as a business owner, to go on another point, I invested the money to go totally solar. So back in 2022, I put the money out. I put enough solar panels on the top of my house that I've created 4.6 megawatts of energy more than what I've used. Now, I don't get paid for that extra energy, I get a credit. It keeps adding up. The way that we've changed the rules has disincentivized people to go with clean energy solar because you've changed the net metering rules or allowed Duke to change the net metering rules. Well, that's another part of the greed. When you look at Edwardsport has cost $3.5 billion as the most expensive plant in the state, in Duke's whole portfolio. It is a corporation basically spending our money recklessly on programs that were not a good idea to begin with. So what you're looking at doing is rewarding that, which makes no sense whatsoever. It makes no sense. Carbon sequestration makes no sense. We're going to allow them to keep investing in boondoggles and then increase the amount of money that's being spent on coal and increase coal burning when we know that the Atlantic Ocean is 1 degree warmer than it was on average from 2008 to 2014 right now, and we're expecting record hurricanes across Texas and Florida and Louisiana and Mississippi this year. So not only are you supposed to represent us, but if you allow this to happen, you're allowing more of those gases to go into the air. That's negatively affecting our environment. And at some point, you need to wake up and realize that you represent us. You represent us, people in Bloomington. Don't represent the money that's sloshing around within the political system that may have gotten you here where you're at. But you need to wake up and look people in the eye and represent the citizens that you're supposed to represent. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Jana Perot. Jana Perot. Sir, if you'd state your name and spell it.
Neil Goswami, Neilgoswami. Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Neil Goswami, and I stand before you today deeply concerned about Duke Energy's proposed rate hike. This 33% increase isn't just a financial burden. It represents a direct threat to the well-being of countless Hoosiers. Duke Energy is asking us to bear an additional $491.5 million in costs by 2026. This comes at a time when 14% of Hoosiers live in poverty. In specific communities such as Black and Latino Hoosiers face even higher rates of poverty. For many in our community, this hike will mean choosing between basic necessities like heating, food, and medicine. Let's be clear. This is not just about numbers. It's about the human cost. It's about the single mother who will have to choose between keeping on the AC in 96-degree weather and putting food on the table for her children. It's about the elderly couple on a fixed income who can barely afford their medications, let alone a massive hike in their utility bills. These are real people with real lives, not just figures on a balance sheet. This rate hike will push them into further financial hardship, forcing impossible choices and deepening struggles. Duke Energy's proposal is not just unjust, but environmentally irresponsible. They continue to heavily invest in coal, resulting in massive CO2 emissions and environmentally harmful coal ash and costly cleanup projects. Now they want us to pay for their environmental mismanagement. This is not just unfair, it is an abdication of their responsibility. Now, you might have noticed I'm not as old as much of the rest of the crowd. In fact, I was born in the year 2000. And I often find myself wondering what the world's gonna look like in 2070 or 2060. You know, maybe I'll have like a nice goatee, right, sitting on a porch here in Bloomington. The International Panel on Climate Change has adopted the use of representative concentration pathways that depict what the world will look like based on correlations with greenhouse gas emissions. With Duke doubling down on coal usage, they are sadly damning my generation and condemning us, committing us to a future of the most bleak RCP. You folks on the Indiana Utility Regulatory Commission have a critical role in safeguarding the interests of Indiana residents. Approving this rate hike, in my view, would be a gross failure of that duty. It would allow Duke Energy to continue to prioritize their profits at the expense of us, of our communities. Duke Energy Indiana alone made $497 million in profit. And nationwide, Duke Energy Corporation made nearly $3 billion in profit. In profit. Commissioners, I urge you, please reject Duke Energy's rate increase proposal. Stand with the people of Indiana. Show Duke Energy, show this company that they cannot continue to exploit us for their gain, and demand that they take responsibility for their actions and invest in a cleaner, more sustainable, and equitable future for all Hoosiers. Thank you.
Again, ladies and gentlemen, I would ask you to, as you're considering what you want to say when you testify, consider what's been said before. Again, those comments have been noted by the commissioners, and so I would just ask you again to avoid repetitive testimony. Right now we have 39 more speakers. Each individual were to speak just for 3 minutes. We're going to be here for another 2 hours, which is certainly fine, but I just don't want you to bear in mind your others, fellow speakers. Thank you.
Dane Roberts. Please state your name and spell it.
Okay. My name is Lois Sabo Skelton, LOIS-SAVO-SKELTON. I'm here this evening as a customer of Duke Energy, And I am deeply concerned about this increase in utility charges. You know, it seems that Duke Energy is now asking us to give more money so they can do all kinds of development. And my question is, will this development really help our climate? Will it really help our lives? Will it really help our children's lives in the future? Duke Energy asks that, you know, we raise our bills, that we will be forced to alter our incomes, many of whom, as you've heard, will be limited or finite. Is this really fair? Those who are on these limited budgets will now have to make choices, as you've heard, on food, education, and medicine. My question is, why do we have to figure out how to make this work? Why can't Duke Energy figure out how to limit things in their budget, their very big budget with lots of investments, and with all their corporate lawyers? Why can't these lawyers figure out how to alter the budget so poor people don't have to do with less food or medicine? I don't get it. It's 2024, and here we are tonight. Just like it was kind of in the medieval era, when the tax collectors of the feudal lords made their visits to the peasants and took their money and crops and their dignity. This raise is beyond the pale. This is mean. And I know that many of us will be looking for alternative ways and decisions. You know, what else can we do to get away from Duke Energy? Because this is a heartless move towards the needs of the people. And it is obvious that Duke Energy, the needs of Duke Energy, is foremost in this corporate's plan. This is indeed a tragic example, once again, of corporate greed. If you will allow this raise in our utilities, people will suffer. I hope you will truly, truly think about this, because you've heard many things tonight about the situations that people are in. But how nice it would be if Duke Energy could rethink this and truly do something beneficial for the people that they serve or claim to serve. Thank you.
Juliana Daly. Juliana Daly.
My name is Jana Perot, that's Janapereau. I and my neighbors are residential users of Duke Energy electricity, and I'm here tonight to ask the Commission to deny Duke's outrageous proposal to increase our utility bills by $42 a month, with sales tax that comes to $45 each month, adding up to $540 a year. That's $540 on top of whatever we're paying now. For many Duke's customers, my neighbors, that is a huge burden. For some, it may even trigger homelessness as they struggle with additional financial cost. I am here to ask that the Commission reduce the burden on my community by taking several actions. 1, the Commission should reduce Duke's return on equity, otherwise known as profit. Duke is a public service utility and enjoys a monopoly on the supply of electricity to users in its service area. A monopoly. In return for that freedom from competition, They are supposed to be responsive to their customers. And the commission, you guys, are supposed to make sure that they are not engaged in price gouging or other actions harmful to the people they are supposed to serve. If I and my neighbors could change electricity suppliers, we would. But as you and Duke well know, we cannot do that. Duke is plenty profitable as it stands, as you've heard. It already has the highest profit margin of all electric utilities in Indiana. That's over $490 million in profits last year. And to that, they want to add an additional $500 million. This is an abuse of their monopoly status, and you, the commissioners, should deny their request. 2, please also deny the Duke proposed increase in the monthly fixed charge from $10.54 to $13.70, a 30% increase that occurs no matter how much or how little energy one actually uses. Again, Duke's mismanagers are asking for this increase in part to cover the cost of their bad business decisions. And only they and their stockholders should pay for these, not the ratepayers. Among their bad business decisions, refusing to transition to cleaner and now cheaper alternatives. Investing in the boondoggle that was Edwardsport, a supposedly green gasification plant that went hugely over budget and even now is an inefficient and expensive energy source. Buying a huge stockpile of coal, now more expensive than gas, that they need to burn or take a loss. A dumb business decision that stockholders should pay for, not us. 3, I strongly disagree with Duke's profit strategy of using declining block rates, which sounds like it should mean lower bills, but in fact means that Duke makes the folks who use the least energy pay the highest rate. Thus, if you are an energy conscious and use the least fuel you possibly can, Duke charges you more per kilowatt hour, discouraging rather than encouraging energy conservation. In addition, these high rates disproportionately impact seniors and low-income households. It's just not right. 4, this is a doozy. Duke wants us ratepayers to fund yet another study of carbon capture and storage at Edwardsport. Duke wants to add $9 million for an additional study of a technology that has never been proven to work at scale after 20 years or more of serious study by universities and other utilities. Not to mention, we pay Duke for electricity, not studies. If they want studies, they and their stockholders should pay for it. 5, I want you to disallow any rate increases that cover Duke's bad investments. Duke knowingly entered into contracts for more coal than they needed. Why? Good question, commissioners. Duke now has a huge overstock of coal, and they want taxpayers, again, to bail them out, ratepayers, to bail them out for investing in a dirty and expensive and unneeded coal supply. And they now want to profit from this coal. That's right, earn profit on the unused, unneeded coal supply that they purchased in 21 and 22. The more coal Duke burns, the higher our bills. They plan to burn way more coal this year and in 2025 than they have even in previous years. In conclusion, I and my neighbors ask you to deny Duke's rate hike. Please do your job and protect consumers. Those of us who do not make anywhere close to the $22 million that this Duke Energy CEO takes in. Protect my community from price gouging and preserve the ongoing affordability of this essential service. Thank you.
Robin Skuya Boss.
Does it go this side?
No, that's the court reporter's microphone. Is that okay? The lower one, though, is what will magnify your voice. Thank you.
I shall stoop. Ladies and gentlemen.
I need your
Oh,
name,
yes, I'm
please,
sorry.
and
Yes,
spell.
Yes, Dane, Dayne, Roberts. First, let me thank you all for being here, and all of you as well. The individual before me, I have to be honest, kind of stole my thunder a little bit. I was going to touch on the idea of captive customers, and the idea of a monopoly that Duke holds in the state of Indiana. But that's already been said, and I'm not going to repeat it again, and we all know it. Next, the idea of ordinary people, and what does that mean? For me, I can only speak for myself and my 83-year-old mother. I know a lot of people here have talked about the city of Bloomington, but we are not just here to talk about the city of Bloomington, we're here to talk about the state of Indiana. For myself, my electric bills are fairly manageable. I'm 45 years old and I make approximately $2,000 a month. You work out the percentages there. But for my mother, and part of the reason I'm here is to speak on her behalf, 83 years old, Bedford, Indiana, on a fixed income of Medicaid and Medicare. The idea of, I've heard different percentages thrown out. I'm sure the panel, Duke will throw out percentages. We have come up with our own percentages. Whatever the percentages are, they are an increase that I can say, for my mother's sake, is unsustainable. And for a woman at 83 years old who relies on less than $1,000 a month to try and scrimp and save, to wonder whether or not she's going to have the money for air conditioning, it's a shame. I would, with all fiber of my being, propose that Duke reconsiders what they're proposing here. For the vast majority of Indiana residents, regardless of their annual income level, whether it's like myself, $82,000 a month or $6,000 a month, whether you're making $50,000 a year or $100,000 a year. As other people said before me, it comes down to a right to be comfortable. I myself, I just turned my air conditioning on, this is fact, yesterday. Up until that point, I lived in an upstairs apartment, and I relied on outside outsourced fans because I am afraid of how much that energy cost is going to cost me, what it's going to do to my monthly budget, whether or not it's going to take away from gas in my car for my ability to go to work or my ability to put food in my refrigerator. For so many Hoosiers across this state, I implore you to please take a step back, reconsider. That's all I have to say. Thank you very much.
Victoria Helkovich.
My name, is that better? My name is Juliana Day.
Can you bring the microphone towards you too? The other guy was a lot taller.
Oh, how's that? Okay. Juliana Daly, Julianna, Daly, spelled Dailey. I'm going to be very brief. I have no planned speech, so I'm speaking completely and totally from my heart. I am retired, I get Medicare, and I'm a volunteer at WFHB Radio, and I've been a volunteer there for almost 10 years doing a show called Eco Report, which is all about the environment. So that makes me a very strong environmentalist, and I am completely opposed to this rate increase. Indiana is considered the 10th dirtiest air quality state in the entire United States. And it is because of coal. Why haven't we moved to solar energy and wind? It needs to be done. And that is all I have to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Peg Hausman.
Hi, Robin Skybus, ROBYN, SKUYA-BOSS. Members of the Commission, the Sierra Club Hoosier chapter asks that you oppose Duke's proposed rate increase and cause number 46038. We are a statewide organization committed to protecting the environment for all Hoosiers. We are dedicated to a clean energy transition to mitigate the worst impacts of climate change. And when we see the state's largest investor-owned utility file a rate increase that props up its uneconomic investments in coal and places the high cost of that strategy directly onto its customers, we are compelled to oppose these plans. Duke is the largest and most profitable investor-owned utility in Indiana, earning $497 million in profits in 2023. And yet, with the clean energy transition well underway, Duke continues to produce 96% of its electricity from fossil fuels. Despite being Indiana's largest electric provider, Duke has fallen steeply behind all other Indiana investor-owned utilities in the transition to renewable energy. Duke owns roughly the same amount of renewable energy today as our state's smallest utility, CenterPoint, whose retail electric sales are about 6 times smaller than Duke's. The short-sighted focus on fossil fuel generation is particularly relevant to this proposed rate increase, which has everything to do with continuing to burn coal at uneconomic facilities and cleaning up the toxic byproduct of that coal ash. $246 million of the rate increase would go toward operations, maintenance, and other projects at these coal facilities. Another $223.5 million would pay for the coal ash cleanup costs, including $92 million previously disallowed by the Indiana Court of Appeals. All of these costs continue burning coal have dire financial impacts on Duke customers, particularly residential ratepayers. Average residential customers will see their bills increase $42 per month from what they are currently paying, or over $500 per year. The Hoosier chapter is very concerned about the ability of ratepayers to cope with an increase that high. Zooming out, this proposed rate increase would raise Duke's return on equity from an already lucrative 9.7% to a state-leading 10.5%. While Duke ratepayers would struggle to figure out how to pay for these massive rate increases. Duke shareholders would realize an even higher return on their investment. This is a clear example of an organization placing shareholder interests far above customer interests, of pushing the costs of bad planning and decision-making squarely on Hoosier ratepayers. Doubling down on burning coal also comes at severe environmental cost. Hoosier land, air, and water will bear the brunt of this pollution longer than necessary if Duke extends coal burning to 2035. Duke's rate case also includes plans to increase the amount of coal burning between 2024 and 2029. Another example of Duke's failure to diversify energy resources, and an example of Duke's disregard for our communities, all in the pursuit of higher profits. Those greenhouse gas emissions will continue to contribute to a worsening climate crisis that is unfolding before us across the country. We call on Duke to change course this year and drive investments into solar, wind, and battery storage to fully pursue demand response and energy efficiency instead of coal, and to take advantage of the historic financial incentives in the Inflation Reduction Act to help pay for these investments. It is this course of action that will most benefit Duke ratepayers from a financial and environmental perspective. For all these reasons, we ask you to oppose Duke's rate increase in cause number 4603. Thank you.
Jacob Boss. Jacob Boss?
Hello, I'm Victoria Hilkovich, Victoria. Hilkovich, Hilkevitch. And I'm not going to read my talk. In the interest of time, I'm just going to say a few points that either haven't been said or barely said. Of course, I'm totally opposed to this increase in electric bills. The cost of essential utilities should not be inflated to require ordinary citizens to be making executive employees and shareholders rich. I should pay the essential cost of providing electricity to my community. I'm not interested in providing huge profits to a class of extremely rich employers. For instance, Lynn Good, the chair and CEO of Duke, received total adjusted compensation of $21 million in 2022, which was a 30% increase from the year before. Okay. In terms of increasing costs, because of net metering, Duke is making money from, I have solar panels, ground-mounted solar panels. They are making money from the excess energy that I produce. That's profit that they're getting all the time from me. They sell it at retail to other customers. Pure profit. Nobody, I don't think anyone's quite mentioned that. I understand that, nobody's mentioned this, the non-utility costs that Duke and energy companies tend to pass on to customers, like lobbying, trade association membership, charitable contributions, advertising, and campaign contributions. In other words, not energy costs. An Ohio bill would not stop utilities from doing that, but it would bar them from adding those expenses to customers' rates. Instead, it forces them to draw from profits that they would have returned to shareholders. And this is as it should be. Colorado, Connecticut, and Maine have passed similar laws. Indiana should follow suit. Also, somebody just mentioned block rates. Absolutely. Block rates reward people for using more energy. Why is Duke doing that? Shouldn't they be rewarding people for using less energy? So I'll just conclude and say, please deny Duke's rate hike, protect consumers, prioritize affordability and pollution concerns when deciding this case. Thank you so much.
Ryan Still.
Howdy, Dr. Peg Hausman, P-E-G-H-A-U-S-M-A-N. I'm a Bloomington resident and a Duke customer, but I'm in disguise this evening. I'm dressed as global warming, the elephant in this room. Of course, the current heat wave has been reminding Hoosiers of my existence, but do Hoosiers remember previous heat waves? The ones that repeatedly killed thousands of people in Europe. The ones that cooked millions of shellfish alive in British Columbia. The ones that unleashed wildfires over huge swaths of Siberia, Canada, Australia, and that killed my nephew's best friend, a volunteer firefighter in Washington State, because global warming has an echo. I know that this hearing is about Duke's rate case, not its 20-year plan, but Duke's plan is relevant to the rates it wants to charge. I've seen it. It doesn't seriously address me. In fact, Duke's energy plan assumes Hoosiers have amnesia about me. Only 5% of energy from renewables, losing millions of dollars yearly to keep running deadly coal-fired plants. And Duke asked me rewarded for it with higher returns than last time, and higher than what other Indiana utilities are making. Duke's profits need to be more in line with what its customers can afford and with what its peers get. And its priorities need to be more in line with the people's needs to confront me. Thanks to you all.
Tara Gebert.
Jacob Boss, Jacobboss. Good evening, Commissioners, and thank you for being here. In the interest of time, I won't read my prepared statement, but instead I'll restrict myself to what I believe is novel in my remarks, which is to speak to the situation of young professionals in Bloomington. You see, Bloomington is a city where young professionals go to office jobs wearing collared shirts and slacks, and they return home to their roommates in their crumbling apartment buildings because they are required to live in trying conditions in order to afford life here. Any increase in the cost of living above what they already struggle under would be intolerable. And yes, I'm speaking about young professionals, not the most vulnerable, who have already been eloquently advocated for today. I'd like to invite you to please think and step into the shoes of these young professionals, to really think about all of the costs that accumulate every month in their lives. I'm talking about fully employed, fully insured individuals, many of whom own cars, and who must buy food, pay their car payments, pay their student loan payments, pay outstanding medical bills, must pay for repairs and replacements for all of those things on which they rely and for all the necessities of life. And I'd like to remind you, Commissioners, that the cost of living for all of those items, toilet paper, soap, shampoo, not to mention the far more expensive items, yet no less essential, such as fixing a broken cylinder in a car engine, a car that you rely on to get to your office job. All of those things have dramatically increased in cost, yet wages have not kept pace. And so these individuals who are middle-class professional individuals, they too live lives of precarity. My friends and my loved ones, who are members of this young professional class, have very similar conversations to the ones which we have heard are the frequent topic of concern for the most vulnerable. How will I afford my medication? How will I afford to fix my car if something happens? How will I afford to even dream of something like retirement? And so, Commissioners, I ask you to please deny Duke's rate hike and show consumers, every kind of consumer, that they are well protected and that affordable energy is being prioritized in this case. Thank you for your time.
Eddie, R.I. something V, Junior, I believe?
Yeah.
Thank you. Sir?
Ryan Still, RyanStill. I work at the Bloomington Housing Authority. We provide Section 8 vouchers to 1,500 plus residents in this community, households in this community, and I personally oversee a caseload of about over 300 households. A lot of people think, you get on Section 8 and you're good. You might imagine that, but there's actually quite a bit of people not able to get onto Section 8. About 6,300 households within Monroe County and the surrounding county. Right now, it's just 6,300 households. There's 2,500 plus households that have children within that amount, and there's over 1,900 households that are disabled or have a member of their family that are disabled. People are struggling, obviously. We also hear from our township trustees, who we work very closely with, that they have had to turn away or not be able to assist as many people that are coming for help. As you may or may not know, you go to the township trustee, you ask for energy assistance, rent assistance if you're unable to. They've had higher numbers than ever, and they're struggling with that as well. My point to say this is that the safety net that we have is great. It's overflowing. There's not a good safety net to fall back on. If the rate is raised, people will suffer directly, and there is nothing there to catch them because it's overflowing. This means that more people are going to have to deal with exposure to the elements. People are going to become homeless. People are going to struggle to eat. These are realities that will happen if the rate is raised. That's it.
Phil Shumhoff.
My name is Tara Deppert, and I'm a health insurance broker in Indiana. I oppose the Duke Energy rate hike. I didn't spell my name, sorry. Tara, T-A-R-A, Deppert, D-E, P as in Paul, P as in Paul, E-R-T. I oppose the Duke Energy rate hike. In October of last year, I met with an 80-year-old Medicare recipient, a client, whose premium on her Plan F Medicare supplement skyrocketed to $400 per month. She had just been diagnosed with cancer, and she didn't feel comfortable switching to the cheaper Medicare Advantage plan, and she didn't qualify to change Medicare supplements. When I left her house, she was in tears, and of course I was upset because we couldn't make that change for her. $400 a month is really high, but to add on another $42 a month, that is a choice in medications. And where seniors run into trouble is at the end of the year when they go in the donut hole, which of course will hopefully change next year. But this year, I have a friend who went into the donut hole who was told he would have to go and purchase the medication at full retail price in December. He could possibly try to order it from Canada or an international market. He could try to find some discount coupons, but in the month of December, he wasn't going to be able to afford his medication. So he was trying to make it through till January 1st. So we're talking about getting down to those times, those scary, scary times for people in choosing to not have medication for 4 weeks, and he doesn't know what's going to happen to his health. It has a ripple effect, that $42 rate hike, and I think a lot of people have touched on the ripple effect. It's going to affect, I'm assuming, not just residents, but I'm assuming it'll affect businesses and grocery stores, education, schools. I think it's going to affect probably every aspect of our life. We're going to see an increase at a time when it's already unstable. I mean, it feels very unstable for us, everyday consumers, when you go to the store and one day, you know, your lettuce costs you $1.25, and the next day it costs $6.99, and we have no explanation for that rate hike. You know, and now we know there's going to be an explanation for at least a little bit because they're going to have to pay more in electric rates. My marketplace clients that call, I have a lot of families and single individuals who can't find jobs to get above that poverty line, but they don't qualify for Medicare yet. So they have to choose between either a high premium or a high deductible. Those people, a lot of the young kids are like, well, I'm healthy, I'll take the chance. So I'll get a high deductible of like $6,000 or $7,000 that they can't afford, which of course is going to have to be written off later, which of course affects everybody else. Everything's a ripple effect. This $42 is going to affect people's everyday lives, and it's going to be the most vulnerable, and I think you've heard that from everyone. I oppose the Duke Energy rate hike on behalf of my clients. Thanks.
Again, Phil Shumhoff, Molly O'Donnell, Valerie Miriam.
Hi, my name is Eddie, E-D-D-Y. My last name is Ryu, R-I-O-U. I'm a junior. I'm the Executive Director of South Central Community Action Program, commonly known as SCAP. We help a lot of folks with energy insecurities. This past year in our region of not just Monroe County, we've helped 4,100 families that were energy insecure. Duke Energy has helped us in the past in the state with funding through through the Duke Energy Foundation, particularly the Share the Light Fund, has provided more than $3 million to struggling Hoosiers. Regardless of what the URC decides, we hope that Duke Energy continues to fund these efforts and, more importantly, robustly fund these efforts if costs continue to rise. Thank you.
Kathleen Voges.
I'm Molly O'Donnell, Mollyoodonnell. Pretty much everything I was going to say has been said, so I won't repeat any of that. I convene an interfaith group called Earth Care Bloomington, and we help congregations and their members reduce their energy use with the goal of eventually going to renewables. Thank you.
Glenn Steenberger.
Valerie Merriam, VALERIEMERRIAM. Thank you for being here. I have noticed not one person has stepped up to say they want a rate increase. I don't have prepared remarks, and there's been such eloquence before me. But I want to say, I helped run that food pantry at Macomb for over 18 years. And so as the economy has changed, I have seen the change in our clientele. I have seen it go up, even off, go up. I can guarantee you that this kind of price increase will see a huge increase in the number of patrons to food pantries in this community. We've had to go from 2 bags to 1 bag per family because the need has grown so much. But one thing that nobody has addressed is kind of that elephant in the room, that when people are hot and they're sitting in their homes, their apartments, their nerves fray, they get angry, and domestic violence increases and child abuse increases. So don't think that we're just talking about $42 a month and really the base is a percentage above. There are a lot of human lives involved in these increases. I'll lastly say, I'll use a new adjective. I consider Duke's proposal vulgar. Thank you.
Lane Filton.
Hi, I'm Kathleen Boggess. Kathleen, Kathleen, Boggess, Boggess. I have an advanced degree in counseling psychology. I serve as a court-appointed special advocate, and I serve on a steering committee for Indiana Solar for All, a program that puts solar panels on low-income houses to help those people reduce their electric bill. It's a habitat model, so they really do the work. We supply the panels. I'm also involved in a group that is planning for the fall to have a poverty simulation, because we don't believe a lot of the people in Bloomington really understand how poor our community really is. So we want them to go through a simulation and see what it feels like to struggle and live that low-income life. I've been told I have pretty good reasoning skills, but for the life of me, I cannot reason through this increase. It just makes no sense to me. I had some figures that I wanted to throw out, but those all went aside when I learned that the CEO makes $22 million a year. Now I know $35,000 a year is not a lot, but many families are making less than that. 600 families at $35,000 a year equals $21 million. So Duke needs to prioritize differently. They don't need to put the responsibility on us, the consumer. They need to think about their profit margin and start using that to clean up their coal ash. They made bad decisions. They overpurchased, so they have stockpiles of coal. Other people have talked about that. We should not have to pay for the cleanup of the coal ash, not when it was their mistake, their irresponsibility. They're also irresponsible in that they're only committing 3%. Others have talked about this as well. 3% of their energy production is with renewable energies. That is just unacceptable, insane, irresponsible, what other adjectives you want to add on to that. Before I retired a few years ago, I worked for the Monroe County School Corporation as a school counselor. So I saw struggling students. Today, in Monroe County, 35% of our students are on free and reduced lunch. Thank God they get their breakfast and lunch at school so their parents can have food to eat at home. I'm not sure what they eat for supper. But if this increase goes to them, what is it that they're going to give up? Are they going to give up the medical treatment for that child that has asthma and emphysema because of our poor air quality due to the coal burning? Are they going to give up a dental appointment that that child needs because they just simply can't afford it anymore? And then what's even more insane is when they can't pay that monthly bill, that increase in their bill, they're going to get shut off. And then they're going to be socked with an exorbitant re-upping, I can't even think of the word I want, to reconnect, yes, the reconnection fee. We're just beating them into the ground again and again and again. This insanity just absolutely has to stop. This makes no sense to me. My reasoning just does not come around to saying Duke deserves this increase. We don't have a choice. Somebody else said this. This is a monopoly. We can only get our power from Duke, except I do also have solar panels, and I've had them for 12 years. But those that don't are forced to buy from Duke. We don't have a choice. We don't have a choice. We can't rely on our legislators. We can rely on Shelley and Matt, but we just don't have enough Shelleys and Matts up in the State House voting in favor of the consumer because they're getting money in their pockets for re-election from Duke Energy. Again, it makes no sense. This is irresponsible. We have no choice. You are our only hope. You can make the right decision. You can make the decision to say no to this insane increase that Duke is asking for. Thank you.
Lisa Thomason. Tom Shelton. Jamelia Allison. If you would state your name and spell it, please.
My name is Glenn Steenberger, Glensteenberger, and I am the Scout Executive CEO of the Hoosier Trails Council Scouting America, which is based out of Bloomington here. Let me start by saying that I'm not qualified to address the proposed rate increase. Rather, I'd just like to leave that to the experts. The organization that I help to lead is a Duke customer, which I've led for 14 years. And Duke is a community partner to us. Duke has provided us with, helped us provide challenge program to low-income families that are challenged. As we've heard today, this is kind of the other side of it. Duke has partnered with me over the years in simple things as setting the flagpoles in front of my council service center with one of their teams, providing corporate leadership to serve on our executive board and help to lead our programs, and they've also helped provide some financial support for our STEM after-school programs. These community investments help to prepare kids for life, making them resilient and providing tools to enable future success. I'd just like to go on to the record by stating that Duke is a partner to this community, and it's not just a public utility. Thank you.
James Allison.
Hi, my name's Tom. Is this right? My name's Tom Shelton, Tomshelton. Live in Bloomington, and it sounds like Duke's responsible for groceries, healthcare, energy. Too bad we don't have those people here to complain about. Okay, some background. A compound sulfur hexafluoride SF6 is used by electric utilities industry for insulation in high voltage situations and in switchgear disconnect switches. It is classified as a greenhouse gas and is 25,000 times more polluting than CO2. It remains in the atmosphere about 3,200 years. In 2020, Duke Energy leaked nearly 11 metric tons of SF6 into the atmosphere from its substations in North Carolina and South Carolina alone, more than any other utility in the country, amounting to more greenhouse gas than 59,000 vehicles annually. Duke does not participate in a voluntary program with the EPA regarding SF6, unlike many other utilities in the country. Since 1999, Duke has remodeled 13 generating units and 5 coal power plants without once adding required environmental controls. Duke pleaded guilty to 9 criminal violations of the Clean Water Act and paid $68 million fine plus $34 million for river cleanup in the Carolinas. In 2020, North Carolina Public Staff, which is a public agency that defends ratepayer interests, argued successfully that Duke was improperly asking customers instead of shareholders to pay more than $4 million in political donations. In 2022, Duke was fined by the EPA for violations to the Clean Water Act and paid $975,000 with no admission of guilt. It seems to me that shareholders' investments in a company ought to be the primary source of upgrading any improvements that company undertakes. After all, the investment is a voluntary act of trust, first to help the business buy whatever it needs to do business and deliver a good product and clean up the messes and to do what it is proposing to do. And it trusts that that business will act responsibly to its customers and its investors and the environment in such a way that is responsible. And second, there hopefully for these investors will be some financial return. A request for a substantial rate increase by a company that has been in a violation of its billing practices to its customers and repeatedly been found guilty and fined for disregarding its environmental responsibilities ought to be viewed with much skepticism and, I should think, refusal. Since the president and CEO of Duke Energy receives more than 90% of their annual income of over $20 million a year as stock value income, it is no surprise that the cost of a coal ash cleanup and a carbon capture and sequestration study be charged to Duke's customers rather than by the stockholders and the investors made voluntarily. Or so anyway, that's all I got to say. Thanks.
Colin Nielsen.
My name is Tomalea Allison, Tomilea, Allison, Allison. I call your attention to a June 16th article in the Herald Times headlined, I quote, "State program could help Hoosier households lower energy bills." The state program would help Hoosier households by a program that is financed by the Federal Inflation Reduction Act. And the state will send energy auditors to our homes as part of a home efficiency rebate program to replace polluting, inefficient appliances and thus lower our energy bills. I would love to see another headline: Indiana Regulatory Commission helps lower energy bills. How? By carefully scrutinizing Duke's request for this unnecessarily huge rate increase. How? By questioning Duke's sky-high executive salaries. Their need for 5 helicopters and 3 corporate jets. Consider the cost of keeping that Air Force flying. And why should Duke get to externalize the cost of their massive coal ash cleanup? This company should have done that long ago. And what gall! Duke claims to be transitioning to alternative fuel sources at the same time that it's actually increasing its use of coal. Other utilities in Indiana have a far better environmental record and programs for those who face shutoffs. Why is Duke's record so bad? As a former mayor of Bloomington, I know only too well that this inflationary rate increase will harm our small businesses, our social agencies, and government budgets. But it will hit the hardest on working families living paycheck to paycheck and retirees. I hope you will reject this inflationary rate increase or tell the public why you think it's reasonable.
Welcome to all of you. I'm James Allison, spelled J-A-M-E-S-A-L-L-I-S-O-N. I'm a retired psychology professor here at IU. I've been paying for my electricity since about 1963, right here. I'm not going to talk about Bloomington, though. I passed through the small southern town called Edwardsport, Indiana, hundreds and hundreds of times on my way to and from an airport in Lawrenceville, Illinois. With one exception, Edwardsport has changed very, very little, imperceptibly almost, during those many, many years. The exception came about from Duke Energy's disastrous decision in the early 2000s to expand its coal-based generation of electricity in Edwardsport with a revolutionary new clean technology that would sequester the nasty carbon byproducts deep, deep underground. The immense size of the new plant had Edwardsport citizens pretty excited about its expected economic impact on their community. Justifiably so. I remember when several of them came up to Bloomington one evening to speak in support of that project during its approval phase. I remember it well. Unfortunately, sequestration never panned out, as you all know. But thanks to Duke's friends in high places, the ratepayers footed the bill for that enormous but mostly now idle plant that you can see anytime you want to as you drive through Edwardsport on Highway 67, as I did many hundreds of times. What does experience tell me? Experience tells me that Duke's proposed rate hike is a similar adventure in screwnomics that merits the very closest scrutiny by the agency, your agency, ladies and gentlemen, responsible for the protection of retired ratepayers like me. Thank you.
Hello, my
name is Colin Nielsen, COLLINNIELSEN. I'm here to oppose Duke Energy's proposed high rates, and as people mentioned previously, it is a government-sanctioned monopoly and you are the people standing in between us and them taking advantage of the fact that they are a monopoly. So I won't get too much into that, but I just want to say that Duke could not have chosen a worse time, honestly, to ask for rate hikes. As many people mentioned, they're not directly responsible for our rent and our groceries and everything else increasing, of course, but or they're not really responsible at all. But it is a problem that we just can't afford things that well. And Bloomington is the most expensive city to live in Indiana by far, especially for rent, and it's just a real shame that they're doing this. And I hope that you will oppose it as well. And of course, no one here, obviously, no one's going to really ask for Duke to increase their prices. They're not going to ask for them to increase it even further. That isn't real, and I'm sure none of you came in here today expecting any of us to ask for that or to approve of this, really. But of course, also we're reasonable, and I can assume that most people would agree that we would, if Duke was in financial trouble, we would not want to have our energy provider go under. So, and if they were in, but of course it could be attributed to their fault for investing so much in coal, but even then they are still doing financially very well, and clearly they are not even close to bankruptcy, even close to any financial trouble with their $500 million profit last year. So, so yeah, I just hope to oppose this. Thank you.
Your Honor, we would propose a short break at this time.
All right, it's 8:40. Let's take a 10-minute break to 8:50. Thank you. I would also note that if you have signed up to speak, you will have the opportunity to speak tonight. We just ask that you try to avoid being repetitive as to what other speakers have said. All right, and this time we'll go back on the record. Ms. Park-Straits, may continue, please.
Daryl Bogus, Rebecca Stoops, Sarah Mosher, Nancy Goswami. Please state your name and spell it for the record.
Daryl Bogus, D-A-R-R-E-L-L-B-O-G-G-E-S-S. I respectfully request the Commission to deny this exorbitant request and in doing so also reduce their current return on equity to something that's more reasonable and sustainable and respectful for the customers. That was my bottom line of my previously prepared comments. I'll now skim over a few other topics. Extreme weather and its effects are becoming more frequent. We all know that. Last year may have been the hottest, but it also may be the coolest of any future year. Think about that. I've heard that from numerous sources. The experts tell us that. It's going up, hotter, 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 hotter. We think this is hot? No way. We're not even close. It's a big problem. The climate clock is ticking. Duke Energy Indiana could be part of the solution if they wanted to. Without competition, we have less innovation. Central power plants are vulnerable to tornadoes and terrorist attacks. Much of the electricity is lost before it gets to the point of use. They produce it, but we can't use it because it doesn't get here. Duke's climate action plan is to burn more coal and gas when corporate earnings are up, their stock prices are near all-time highs. If I wasn't so philosophically opposed to the idea, I would consider maybe buying some shares in Duke stock. It's a pretty good investment. Dividends go up, price goes up. I think there might be some metrics in performance of executives, and that's part of what they're measured on. It offends me, especially the excessive executive pay for a few executives. I have no problem with the people out there in the trucks that do the work. They're capable, they're well-trained, they work in all kinds of terrible weather. I give them considerable respect. We're not talking about them here today. The topic of this discussion is a few people at the top of the pyramid, the managers. And what I'm hearing tonight sounds to me like a classic case of management malfeasance. Really. Meanwhile, responding to more electricity demand for electric vehicles, for all these other things, heat pumps, heat pump heating, heat pump water heating, heat pump clothes dryers, it all uses more electricity, and it's a challenge. We're not capable of doing that right now. But if energy demand was elastic, higher prices would mean lower demand. What we need is lower demand and lower prices. Solar owners reduce their energy demand from the grid at their own expense. The utility company doesn't pay for what's on my house, my church, my neighbors' homes. We pay for that. It doesn't go on anybody's electric bill. In addition, we share our excess generation at times of peak demand. Yet this company's lobbyists at the state legislature have advocated consistently, effectively, successfully to restrict distributed energy generation from solar and wind. I believe customer-owned energy generation is a resource that should be encouraged to increase. Much of our solar energy is produced in summer afternoons when time of day rates are the highest. It's valuable. It's when air conditioners are running. People need it. We're helping the public. About half of our solar production goes to the grid, and it's used by our neighbors, and they pay due for what we produce. And the power grid is more robust and resilient, in my view, from what I've heard tonight and what I knew before tonight. This proposed rate increase appears to be a symptom of management suffering from exposure to an industry decline of coal-fired generation that's been replaced by lower cost alternatives, causing their stranded assets to become liabilities. They're asking for a bailout. The company's management seems to expect customers to pay for supporting their habit, while people living near coal and methane power plants are suffering from asthma, emphysema, cancer, and who knows what else. It's time now for an intervention, shifting corporate priorities toward more of a balance of benefits between customers and shareholders. Approval of a rate increase and a higher return on equity would reward the company managers for making bad business decisions. The evidence leads me to conclude that an irresponsible utility company actively opposing distributed renewable energy should have its income and return on equity reduced. And I don't mean reducing the rate of increase of income. I'm talking about an actual, absolute reduction of income. It takes courage. That's why you were appointed.
Hi, my name is Rebecca Stoops, spelled Rebeccastoops. I urge you to deny Duke's rate hike request. Everyone's made excellent points about reasons why. There's so many reasons. I'm just going to talk about Edwardsport really quick. In 2019, I was an intern at Edwardsport. It was really interesting. I learned a lot about how the power plant is designed. It's one of the most complicated power plants ever, which also causes it to be very unreliable. All of its systems are integrated, so when one breaks, they have to shut down other parts of the power plant, and it just has really low reliability. It's also more than 10 years old at this point, which makes it kind of weird that they're wanting to study carbon capture and storage for it now. And it just doesn't make much sense to spend $9 million on that at this point, like in the lifetime of that power plant. So I'm opposed to that too, and I would recommend they spend the money on something more sustainable like renewables infrastructure. That's all. Thank you very much.
Matthew Austin. Joan Middendorf.
My name's Sarah Mosier, S-A-R-A-H. Mosier is M-O-S-I-E-R. And I'm a customer of Duke Energy. I'm a concerned resident. I'm also speaking on behalf of 23 of my family members who live in Bloomington, Harrodsburg, Unionville, Indianapolis, and South Bend. Most of whom are on a fixed income or a very low income, and this rate hike would negatively affect all of them. So I'm asking the Regulatory Commission to deny this rate hike. It's immoral, it's unconscionable, because it's purely for the greed of Duke Energy executives and shareholders. It's just raising their profits. That's the only reason for it. And it would negatively affect so many people across the state who are already struggling, and so many people right here in our community and my neighbors and family. So please reject the rate hike. Thank you.
Eric Spoonmore.
My name is Nancy.
Patty Robinson. Go ahead, please.
Thank you for being here this evening, and thank you for still giving us your attention. Really appreciate that. My name is Nancy Goswami, N-A-N-C-Y-G-O-S-W-A-M-I. I had a little bit of, I don't want to repeat what other people have said. A few things that I would like to highlight. What I've heard here this evening: captive customers, pollution. None of us here have another planet to go to. None of us, not even the people at Duke Energy. Their children will all not be immune. None of us will be immune to the be immune to an unlivable planet. That includes our children, their children, you people sitting here. You won't be immune to it either. And right now you may be in positions of power, but that power is not in perpetuity passed down to your descendants. So what kind of planet do we want for them? It's not about us right now. It's about their future. We're merely the stewards of this planet, and we should leave it cleaner than it was when we arrived. That is our responsibility as decent human beings. Another thing is I have a huge problem with is the profit that I'm hearing that Duke Energy made. And I don't want to, deny, everybody needs to earn a living, right? But actually, how much money do you really need for one lifetime? The executives that I'm hearing make millions of dollars a year. The average income is what? I don't know, 50,000, 100,000. How much money do you need for one lifetime? For me, that's just anything excessive is you're just hoarding resources and taking resources, financial resources away from people that are barely surviving. And one thing I would like to, lastly, I would like to borrow the words of Noam Chomsky. I don't know what word in the English language, I cannot find one, applies to people who are willing to sacrifice the literal existence of organized human life so they can put a few more dollars into highly stuffed pockets. The word evil doesn't even begin to approach it. Thank you.
Kofi Stossberg, Steve Bryant, Steve Bryant,
Hi, I'm Joan Middendorf, JoanMiddendorf. Thank you all for being here and listening to us tonight. I think you can hear that people are a little bit aggravated. And I mean, let's try to understand, why are people aggravated? The way the atmosphere of the earth works, it's like when you put your car outside on a hot day, but you leave every bit of it closed up and it gets really hot inside. And that's what it's like living in the atmosphere that's around the earth. It's just an enclosed space and it gets really hot. But the thing is, by adding the fossil fuel, carbon dioxide, it's getting hotter and hotter. And damned if Duke, instead of lessening the amount of CO2 they're putting in, and remember, we're in that car that's getting hot in the sun, and it's getting hotter and hotter. And Duke, instead of doing things to not make it get hotter and hotter, they're doing things like they're going to burn more coal in the next couple of years, so they're making it get hotter and hotter. And now we're going to need more AC, and they're going to charge us more for it. And then, because they're burning more coal, we're going to have more air conditioning. So we're going to have to, and they're going to charge us more for it. So that's really aggravating, okay? So we're mad about it because they're going the wrong way. They're not trying to let's paint the car white. Let's put a tree up or something like that so the atmosphere quits getting hotter and hotter and hotter, and we're in it. So I think that's just my first point. I think there's just a lot of aggravation because the tack that Duke is taking is making things worse for us, okay? I would like to request that the Commission deny Duke's proposal to increase the 32%. I'm retired. The cost of living increase for Social Security last year was 3.2%, not 32%. So it really hits you. I don't know if you're unretired, but I know what the cost of living increase was, 3.2%. I'm also on the Climate Action Committee for the Near West Side Neighborhood Association, so I'm speaking for the Climate Action Committee. But I do have a specific concern, which is asthma. I moved to Bloomington 40 years ago, never had asthma before that, but over those years living in this part of the state, I have gotten asthma. And Duke has had in the plans to retire some of these coal burning plants, and now they've pushed that back. In fact, the Gibson coal plant, and that's a super polluter plant, is being pushed back to 2035, which is, well, they keep poking the bear. So I do have some data, but it's only from 2018 from from Gibson. Gibson in 1 year released 18 million tons of carbon dioxide. This is like pumping this hotter air into the car. That's the same as 3.8 million cars emission. Also 5.8 million pounds of chemicals into the air and water from the Gibson coal plant, which, when you look at the results of that, causes 110 deaths, 31 hospital admissions, 45 asthma ER visits, 66 heart attacks, 26 chronic bronchitis cases, 714 asthma attacks, and 5,265 work loss days. So, and sustainable energy, or helping people with their health, is a lot cheaper and cleaner. Gives good paying jobs with the sustainable energy projects too. So I'd like to breathe less air particulates in the air. Going to these sustainable ways of creating energy is going to pay for itself with the health benefits. So for me, there's the cost of the energy, and there's the cost that I have to take every day. I take medicine for my asthma, and it's worse for other people. My daughter's partner, they've been together for 8 years. During that time, his father, and he grew up down in Newburgh, Indiana, that's down on the river near Evansville. About 3 years ago, her partner's dad died of lung cancer. So that's in that, what did somebody call it, like the toxic zone or something. Anyway, I just fear more asthma problems as I'm sitting in the car and more toxics are put into the air. So I would like you all to please deny Duke's request for using declining blockchain. I mean, why are we taking people who are trying to put the least of the bad stuff in the air and make them pay the highest rates? Please deny Duke's request for customers to pay $9 million for the carbon capture at Edwardsport. Please don't get me started on Edwardsport. I was at a hearing about 15 years ago about Edwardsport, and I believe, I'm not 100% sure of this, but isn't your commission getting to make this study of whether you should raise rates because of what happened with Edwardsport, because that was done so badly? So I hope you're really listening to our concerns, because I know that I'm still paying for that boondoggle of Edwardsport. Please don't make us pay for unnecessary costs for lobbying and litigation, because I don't think that and this is making us mad, we shouldn't have to pay for lawyers who are working for Duke and against our best interests. Poking the bear. Please don't poke the bear. So finally, I just want to conclude by saying please deny Duke's rate hike. Please protect us. Can you protect us from Duke? I feel like we need to be protected from it at this point. And also prioritize affordability, because that really means a lot to a lot of people. Thank you.
Your Honor, the remaining folks need to be sworn in, please.
All right, if you're going to testify, you've not yet been sworn in, if you would please stand if you're able and raise your right hand. And do you swear or affirm the evidence you will give in this cause will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Great, thank you. You may be seated. Ms. Marks-Drakes, thank you.
Thank you, Your Honor. If you would please state your name and spell it.
Thank you. My name is Hopi Stossberg. That is spelled H-O-P-I. Stossberg, S as in Sam, T as in Tom, O-S as in Sam, B as in boy, E-R-G. And I'm the District 3 City Council Representative for Bloomington. And I'm really happy to see a whole lot of my constituents here, by the way, so way to show up, District 3. I have a couple of things I want to talk about tonight, and the first is I want to draw everybody's attention to the letter that Bloomington City Council passed on Tuesday night. That we passed unanimously, and the mayor is also expected to sign, and I'm going to read an excerpt of that, so it is going to be sent to you guys, and I hope that you read the entire thing. in the interest of time, I don't want to read the entire thing tonight. So to whom it may concern, we are writing on behalf of our constituents, the residents of Bloomington, regarding Duke Energy Indiana's proposed rate increase in cause number 46038. We urge the Office of Utility Consumer Counselor to strongly advocate for, and the Indiana Utility Regulatory Commission to order, a modified proposal and schedule of rates and charges that prioritizes customer affordability and more prudently addresses environmental sustainability as outlined below. We believe the magnitude of the proposed change would increase energy insecurity and cause harm in our community. First, it would reduce residents' ability to pay their bills and lead to tragic trade-offs like foregoing adequate food or medicine. Second, it would increase the rate of disconnection for non-payment, a life-threatening prospect for some, especially during extreme temperatures, and only made worse by a lack of protections against shutoffs during extreme heat in Indiana. According to data compiled by the Indiana University Energy Justice Lab, Duke made over 25,000 disconnections in its Indiana service territory last year. Energy insecurity harms many Hoosiers, but especially low and moderate income households and disproportionately Black and Hispanic households. Skipping a couple of paragraphs. Additionally, we believe Duke's environmental sustainability efforts are too narrowly focused on mitigating the environmental and health harms of coal generation, lacking a broader and long-term sustainability approach. While we agree that existing coal ash must be more safely managed, continued reliance on this harmful and cost-ineffective resource only sets up customers to unnecessarily pay for future cleanups and related costs. Similarly, we do not see carbon capture and sequestration as a sound focus for environmental sustainability because it is largely not cost-effective and does not mitigate many of the environmental and health harms associated with the extraction, distribution, and combustion of fossil fuels. So I thank you for, in the future, reading that entire letter in whole. And then I'm going to take off my counsel hat a little bit for just a minute and speak to you just as another Duke Energy customer. And I'm going to try to not repeat, but some things I think are really important, and sometimes maybe you just need to hear them more than once. And I'm going to try to connect a couple of things together. First of all, electricity is an essential service at this point. It is an essential service. And when you combine the fact that we have this essential service that we need with Duke's monopoly, as some people have said, in some ways, it's almost immoral to think that they're getting $500 million in profit from something that we need and we have no choices but to pay this one company for this service. It's not like I, as a consumer, can shop around and try to get the best price. I have one choice for who signs me up, right, based on where it is that my residence is located. So to take advantage of ratepayers in that way, it's just a little immoral. And the board, the body that stands between the ratepayers and this for-profit company is y'all, okay? That is your responsibility. Second, I want to highlight another piece of that affordability that a couple members mentioned tonight is the utility assistance, right? There is utility assistance available for low-income folks, but if you approve these rate hikes, then more people are going to need that assistance. And so folks that are providing that assistance, like there's a couple choices, right? You either serve fewer people, thus leaving more individuals and families energy insecure, at risk of getting shut off, at risk of having to make the sacrifices that we've already heard tonight, or you figure out more funding. And when you're that nonprofit, where are you going to get more funding? As one of the board member from MACA mentioned, well, you ask for more donations from the community, which means some community members are paying twice. Okay, they're paying Duke the raised rates, and then they're donating more money to their favorite nonprofit to help other people stay connected. Okay, all so that Duke can have higher profits. I don't see that as being particularly moral. The other option, of course, is to find funding from other sources, like government funding. So then you, as kind of a representative of a government body, are saying, well, we'll just make the government pay more money into utility funds to help low-income individuals pay their utility bills. And where does the government get their money? Well, taxpayers again. So if you're a taxpayer like me, maybe, who's paying the higher utility bill, who's donating to my favorite nonprofit, and is also paying my taxes, well, now I'm paying 3 times so that Duke can make billions of dollars in profits. once again, it's a little bit immoral, potentially, I'll use the word immoral, for an essential service. Last, you've also heard tonight from a couple of partners of Duke who have kind of applauded Duke for being involved in different community efforts, for donating to some of those funds, for helping plant trees, for being a good partner. That's great. I'm really glad that Duke does that. And in the letter that I referenced, you know, we also as council members acknowledge some of the good things that Duke does. But when you put those good things, what, $3 million that got mentioned, against a backdrop of $500 million in profits, that is a drop in the bucket. That is ridiculous. That is them trying to like sneak it in on the side and think that we're not smart enough to realize that what they actually want is to just make money. And I don't fault them for wanting to make money. They're a for-profit company, right? They want to make money. That's fine. For-profit companies want to make money. But once again, making money, that much money, off of an essential service that we are stuck paying for is immoral. And you are the body that needs to stand up and say, we're going to inject a little bit of reason and a little bit of morality into this and go, we're not going to allow this for-profit company to take advantage of people like this. Thank you very much for your time and your long evening. You have a great night.
Andrew Oxner, Joseph Davis, Sharon Wayne Scholes Savim, I'm sure I butchered that one, but Sharon, if you would please state your name and spell it.
I'm Steve Bryant, Stevebryant.
Thank you for letting me talk tonight, and thank you to everybody else for making their voices heard as well. I am a citizen and a ratepayer for Duke Energy. I've worked with a lot of Duke Energy employees over the years in various capacities, in economic development and others. There's a lot of good people at Duke Energy doing great work in our community, and they care about what we do. You've heard from others here about the investments that they make in the community, and we appreciate those. I can't say we haven't benefited from those. I do work at Ivy Tech, and I'm not speaking on behalf of Ivy Tech, but I'm speaking on myself. I've been a beneficiary of some of those investments in our entrepreneurship program, where we have a pitch competition for student businesses called Duke It Out. We even named it after Duke. Really important for them to do the great work that they do in the community, to invest in all these organizations you've heard about. I was talking today with a guy working on my deck in my backyard. He's a small business owner. He's working in 92-degree heat. He wasn't necessarily happy I was asking him questions and interrupting his work. But I said, hey, I'm going to this rate hearing tonight for Duke Energy. You know anything about it? He goes, no, but you know what? My property taxes just went up 25% last year. City of Bloomington Utilities just raised my rates 18% or whatever it was. Why would I expect anything different? You know, costs of everything have gone up. This is how it is. Just speaking on his behalf, I'm not saying one thing and the other for or against it, but you know, that was the reaction of somebody who has no knowledge of what's going on at all. And you know, you have a tough decision to make as regulators, and we appreciate what you do. Take all those things into consideration from what everybody has said today, and make the best decision you can. You know, as you consider how this impacts our communities we live in. So, thank you for your time.
My name is Andrew Oxner. That's E-R-E-W, and it's O-X-N-E-R.
I'm sorry, is that O-X?
O-X-N-E-R.
Thank you.
I know it's been a long evening, so instead of going on one tirade like I had planned, I'll keep this very, very short. I am a shareholder of Duke Energy. I benefit from the profits. I get a dividend every quarter. Duke Energy pays out $3 billion a year in dividends to people like me. And as long as they're making $3 billion in excess profit to pay to people like me, I don't need blood money coming from these people. These people deserve a break. And that's all I have to say. Say no to the hike. I don't need the extra money. Thank you.
Are you Sharon?
Yeah.
I apologize.
My name is Sharon Rachel. I'm the first
name is spelled S-H-A-R-O-N, last name is W-A-I-N as in November, S as in September, H-I-L, B as in boy, A-U-M as in mother. Thank you for staying till the very end to hear me speak. I could condone some rate hike from Duke, which is consistent with inflation, but this hike is way over the rate of inflation. Even if you consider inflation at 5%, which is high, the average increase for a bill would be around $7 a month. So this amount is indefensible. It's 5, 6, 7 times that. And bad for the overall economy in Indiana because this will cause more inflation. Second of all, Duke will still make a profit in billions, like the person said before me. Shareholders will still be rewarded handsomely with passive income, even if Duke does not raise rates a penny. This rate hike is not to keep Duke out of bankruptcy. It will just allow them to make more billions, which will go to their executives and shareholders.
I was sworn in, but you didn't ever call my name.
Your Honor, could we go off the record for approximately 3 minutes to be sure that anyone who believes they have filled in a form can come up and see me?
All right, certainly we'll go off the record. It's 9:24. We'll reconvene at 9:27.
There is an obvious path forward that lowers costs, creates value for customers, protects our climate, and saves our planet from destruction. Duke Energy is not on that path. They are on a path that keeps costs high, stifles innovation, and ignores the existential threat to our future that fossil fuels embody. Duke Energy can do better. Duke Energy must do better. I request that the IURC reject this proposed rate increase and work with Duke Energy and all utilities in Indiana to help bring about a cleaner, brighter future for all Hoosiers. Thank you.
Your Honor, we have no additional members of the public who have conveyed a desire to speak tonight. I would remind folks that your written comments, should you want to submit them, will be equally considered. At this time, I would move for the admission of Public's Exhibit FHB1, that being the consumer forms that were completed this evening.
All right, any objection, Ms. Washburn?
No, Your Honor.
Mr. Wells?
No.
Okay, no objection from petitioner nor the Community Action Coalition. Public Exhibit FHB1 is admitted into evidence. Ms. Sparks-Drake, see anything further tonight?
No, Your Honor.
Nothing further from the OECC. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your participation in tonight's hearing. Cause number 46038 is continued to the third field hearing in this cause, which will commence at 5:00 p.m. on June 27, 2024 at the Hamilton East Public Library in the East Center Rooms located at 5 Municipal Drive, Fishers, Indiana, 46038. We'll now go off the record.